1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the palatial yet not overly ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor, 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to a Football Friday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all of our great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course, streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on in. That's 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter X at Zach Gelb. That's ZachGelb. We got a whole lot to do today. We will be joined by Shaun Morash, or as most of you know him, Moraz, coming up at 5:20 p.m. Eastern, 2:20 p.m. Pacific time. When he left the network and moved down the hall, they don't let us call him Moraz anymore, I guess, on his new local radio prime real estate. So we are supposed to call him Shaun Morash. So we will chat with him and do a little NFL picks at 5:20 p.m. Eastern time today, 2:20 p.m. Pacific. Okay, let's start with the abomination that we saw last night. And I think that's the perfect word to describe it. That was a sad football game. That was a horrible football game. That was a putrid football game where, quite frankly, if you wasted your time like I did last night watching that slop fest on a field in Chicago between the Seahawks and the Bears, I feel sorry for you. And quite frankly, you should have done something else better with your time. Because that was 4 hours of me just wasting my time last night. And let's be real. If you're a Seahawks fan, you can't feel fired up today. Quite frankly, I hope the Seahawks don't make the playoffs now. Nothing against the Seahawks. I'd much rather see the Rams than what the Seattle Seahawks gave us last night. Because they could only put up 6 points when the Chicago Bears couldn't do anything on offense. You could only find a way with your offense when the other team just giving you the ball back to only put up 6 lousy points. That's number one. But number two, that was just a really sad scene in Chicago last night. A passionate, great fan base that, quite frankly, it's weird to say that was the straw that broke the camel's back, but this is a fan base that has just been beaten down. They've been emasculated, And last night, it's weird to say it's a cherry on top of the sundae because this is one crappy Sunday, but it is really just the final note of this season, even though there's only one more game to be played. Because that was a national, and I mean a national embarrassment last night. It is amazing, surreal, almost inconceivable that football team, the Chicago Bears, where they won 7 games last year, and now they got Caleb Williams, they've improved their roster, and they're worse this year. And it's not even close. They are 4-12. And this was a team, let me remind you, there was a time where they were 4-2. 4-2. And their 2 losses, they lost 21-16 and 19-13 to the Texans and Colts. So a very small margin of defeat in their 2 losses. But that team that was 4-2, once again, 4-2, hasn't won a game since. They have lost 10 games in a row. And it all started where you had a team that was poorly coached. The cornerback Stevenson, who's running his mouth last night, like, dude, shut up after what you did going back up against the Commanders, where you were chirping the fans, and then eventually you allowed a Hail Mary, which in looking back at it in retrospect, that ended your season. Because that team, ever since moving forward from that point, was mentally broken. They were shot, and they didn't even have the courage to fight the following week. Because if you remember, they got blown out the following week by the Arizona Cardinals. And then, oh yeah, by the way, the following week, they lost to my lousy Patriots, 19-3. So I could sit here and I could shred the Bears for the next 10 minutes. And trust me, we will. But I just want to acknowledge right out of the gate how sad I am for NFL fans that watched that slop fest last night. And in particular, how my heart breaks. Sounds so dramatic. For the Chicago Bears fans. If you went to that game last night, you like pain. That's the only thing I have. Why would you go to that game in those conditions when you knew that you weren't getting a victory? Oh, maybe you want to see the young quarterback. Okay. Maybe the tickets, their tradition, the season tickets, they run in your family, and it's the last home game of the season because you're on the road next week at Lambeau Field, another game you're going to lose. And you'll lose the end of the season on an 11-game losing streak. So maybe until you see football come back, and everyone loves football, you want to see your home team play one more time. Outside of those 2 reasons, just because it's family traditions and it's the last game of the season, or you wanted to see the young quarterback, there was no reason anyone with a working and functioning brain would want to go see that game. Quite frankly, I've never been to a Bears game in Chicago. If I was in Chicago last night and they said, Zach, do you want to go freeze your ass off in the rain and watch that garbage football team with those bums running the organization? I would say, I'm not even taking you free tickets. You wanted to pay me $100, $200 to go to the game. I don't even want your money. I'd rather go to a warm, cozy dinner at a nice restaurant, have a nice scotch, a little whiskey, whatever, have a nice steak, some French fries well done, some lobster mac and cheese, whatever. I'd much rather do that than waste my time watching that team. There is lethargic, and then there is the 2024 Chicago Bears. And if you're a Bears fan, everyone has thought it through this 10-game losing streak. And everyone has thought, are they messing up another quarterback once again? And is Caleb Williams' career already over before it really even got started? We haven't even got through the entirety of the season yet. There's still one more game to go. And when I watched Caleb Williams last night, and I know that team is just getting him absolutely abused. I'm not saying he should look happy, but he looks absolutely miserable, and he looks as if the last place he wants to be is on that football field playing behind that offensive line with this coaching staff. And quite frankly, I don't blame him. Yes, there's sometimes he holds on to the football too long, but that line sucks. This coach who replaced Eberflus, and Eberflus sucked as well, Thomas Brown, he doesn't know the difference between his elbow and his ass. All right? Gee, last night, how many timeouts you going to burn? Oh, we're going to kick a field goal. We're going to punt the ball. No, we're going to call everyone back on and we're going to go for it. Like, what? You're the interim coach. It's 4th down. You're not winning next week. This is the last chance you have to tie or win a game. Of course you go for it. And he's sitting there having to burn a timeout when he figures up what play to draw in the sand. But I got to see more from Caleb Williams. I get it. It's tough. This is where quarterbacks go to die, is Chicago. I'm fully cognizant of it. They've never had a 4,000-yard passer in the history of their franchise. I get how bleak it is. I get how much of a wasted season this is. But I got to see more from Caleb Williams. I got to see him be more of a leader. Because let me tell you something. It's not that much better in New England right now. It's not that much better with that offensive line in New England. And let me tell you, at least they got some weapons in Chicago. Now, you couldn't even pick out some of these receivers in New England in a lineup, quite frankly. They're terrible. And Drake May at least has good leadership skills. He is a competitive fire, and he's not looking like a rookie. And he's galvanizing a group that, quite frankly, is a rotten group around him. That's what I'm seeing Drake May do. Drake May is doing more with less. But for Caleb Williams, who I get it, his stats aren't bad. He has some stuff to work with, but the coaching is so incompetent. What I saw last night was concerning. Because I saw a quarterback, and there's been several moments of this, and I didn't get at him last year for jumping into his mother's arms and crying. I didn't really crush him last year when people were complaining about the body language. I didn't do that. I defended Caleb. I didn't have a big issue with it. But in the NFL, it's a different league. And in an NFL locker room, and trust me, I know that Bears locker room is not a good judge at this. But NFL players know what a leader looks like at the quarterback position. And 9.9 times out of 10, the leader on the football team is the quarterback. And how Caleb Williams, through this stretch, couldn't find a way to win one game, and they lose 10 games in a row, just totally shows me that this entire organization is incompetent, number one, but they've also mailed it in. Defensively, maybe not so much the other night. But offensively, you're not going up against, the early 2000 Ravens. You're not going up against the Steel Curtain. You're not going up against the 85 Bears. You're going up against the Seattle Seahawks. And you could only put up 3 points last night? You got to show me more. It has been clear that the Bears were going to lose a lot of games, 2 months into the season. That was clear. 2.5 months into the season. I thought this team could actually go to the playoffs. How much of a moron was I for thinking that? And I get it. The coach is horrible. The old coach is horrible. This coach is horrible. But when I look at what I'm seeing from the players, even with as bad as the coaching is, you can't tell me that this team, with the talent that they have, is that bad where they should be losing 10 in a row. And let's be real. Their final game of the season, they could show nothing. Even if they win, it's not like you go into the offseason on this high note and it changes the way that this went in the last 10 to 11 games of the season. It does not. But for Caleb Williams, I got to see more, dude. I got to see you be a better leader. I got to see you be more engaged. Because there's times last night where he just has a blank stare and a blank look on his face, and he's like, I'm already out of answers. My confidence is already broken. And I get it. The coaching staff sucks. This team is no good. The offensive line is getting you killed. But how you can't find a way to lead one touchdown drive? I'm not asking, right, to go win the game. How you couldn't get your team in field goal position at the end of the game. And God forbid we had to see overtime. Imagine if we got overtime last night between those two teams. Geez, I would have projectile vomited. But there are certain things you see in bad situations that still give people hope. And so far this year, the only hope that the Bears have is that this season ends next week. That's the only hope. And then just maybe this organization can finally get their head out of the sand and their head out of their asses. And they find a way. Please, I'm not even a Bears fan. I'm begging for those poor people of Chicago that your organization actually hires a competent head coach. That's what I'm begging. Because this is a clown show. This is a circus. And everyone usually likes their time at the circus. It's usually fun. Oh, you get to laugh at the expense of other people. But this is a sad circus. And this is something last night where I'm watching the game and the TV is right in front of you. And do you know how many times my eyes were wandering to my phone? Or my eyes were just turning away from the TV because I was bored. I was so bored. That game last night, I'm surprised even the great Al Michaels, whose energy has taken a hit over the last few years, was even able to muster up some energy for that game. Because I would have, if I was on the call for that game, I would have been falling asleep. I would have been tucked in with a nice glass of milk and some cookies, and I'd be going to sleep at halftime. That's what I would have been doing. Because I would not want to be, even though they're getting paid very much, nice penny, Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit, I would want to be nowhere close to that broadcast booth with how terrible and how just disgusting that game was last night. That was an embarrassment to football. That looked like a preseason game, for crying out loud. In week 17. And Bears fans, you knew what you were getting going into that game. You knew you weren't getting a victory. You knew you're probably going and having fun or trying to have fun with your family at a game like that. But the only reason to go to that game, truthfully, last night is just see the young quarterback play. And that young quarterback, in a year where Jaden Daniels has elevated the Commanders, Drake May, with nothing around him, is showing signs. Bo Nix gets paired with the right coach in Sean Payton, and it looks like they're going to the playoffs. You have a generational talent. You have the number 1 overall pick. And all I got for Bears fans now is I just hope and I just pray and I implore the sports gods that you get the coach right. Because if you don't get the coach right for a quarterback whose confidence is already shot, then they will ruin him. They will completely ruin him. Because he's already showing signs that he's damaged right now. But you will absolutely break him. And within 2 years from this offseason, you'll be looking at the Bears saying, man, what could have been? Or we'll be talking about what team is Caleb Williams going to go to try to be like a Baker Mayfield or a Sam Darnold. There are bad performances, and then there are embarrassing performances. The Bears are clearly a bad team. But to get to this level of embarrassing, and we'll do this conversation later because I didn't think anyone would usurp the Jets being the biggest joke in the NFL this year. But the Bears are right up there. And let me tell you, after last night, they may have moved into the number 1 spot. At least the Jets have won a game the last 10 weeks. The Chicago Bears, 10 in a row. And that's a locker room that if you don't get a proper leader of men this offseason, that is a locker room that is fractured. And if you don't get the right guy this offseason, then it will be completely fractured beyond repair. It's crazy from where the hype and the optimism was before the start of the season to where we are now. And if you put a gun to my head and you said, Zach, do you think the Bears are going to get it right this offseason? Even with Ben Johnson out there and that getting speculated, I'd be a damn fool to say that the Bears are going to get it right. I'd be a damn fool. But I hope for those people of Chicago that they get it right. Because what you saw last night was an abomination, was an atrocity, and was a complete and utter disgrace. And how it's got that bad off truly one moment, which was that Hail Mary that Daniels completed when the team thought they already won the game. Even when you had that embarrassing defeat, the fact that this team is never able to get back off the mat one time for the rest of the season and punch back, it shows you that there's even bigger problems than already the problems that we knew existed with that crappy organization that we call the Chicago Bears. Where are you at in the concern meter with Caleb Williams? Because let me tell you, I'm at like a 7 right now. A 7 out of 10, which is pretty damaging. There is alert signals going off in my cabeza because a young quarterback could lose his confidence very quickly. And once you start to just lose it a little bit, it's very tough to get it back. And the only saving grace Caleb Williams has is just hopefully, and I can't say you can even give the Bears the benefit of the doubt, they get it right this offseason when they name their next head football coach upcoming in the next few weeks. All righty, Zach Gelb here with you on the Infinity Sports Network, 855-212-4227. We'll take a timeout. We'll evaluate some of the other younger quarterbacks in the NFL when we return in 5 minutes.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. "45 seconds remaining. "30 seconds remaining. "15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Alrighty, this is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We're going to use a scale here. Either I think you're a franchise quarterback, I think you're just a guy, or you're not the guy. And we're going to go through some of these younger quarterbacks in the last 3 to 4 years where them being drafted in the NFL. We'll start with Caleb Williams. Right now, I got to say, I know it's a quick evaluation, that he's just a guy. Number 1 overall pick. As we discussed to open up the show, crappy coaching, an offensive line that's abysmal. But we've seen younger quarterbacks in this league with less end up doing more. So I got to see Caleb show me that he could be the franchise quarterback of the Chicago Bears. And so far, I have not seen it. Jaden Daniels. Franchise quarterback. And I know last year, right, what C.J. Stroud did, it has not been able to be replicated in year number 2 with C.J. Stroud. And, right, that organization has regressed a little bit, even though they'll still make the playoffs once again. And obviously, they're in as that division winner. But I thought that what C.J. Stroud did in year 1, he was going to end up becoming a clear, bona fide top 5 quarterback in the league this year. We haven't seen it. But what Jaden Daniels is doing right now is what C.J. Stroud did last year, and he took an organization that was down and out in the Washington Commanders. They're, going to be in the postseason, and maybe they could end up winning a playoff game this year. But to have that organization turn that quickly when it's been a problem for a long time is very, very impressive. And I love the two-way abilities of Jaden Daniels. He could kill you with his arm, and he could kill you with his legs as well. And that's why he was my favorite quarterback heading into this past NFL draft class. Drake May. I know this is early. I know people are going to say, Zach, how could you say that for a quarterback with 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions? Who's he throwing the ball to? I think Drake May could absolutely be a franchise quarterback. And right now, if you ask me, I would put him in the franchise quarterback conversation. You even hear the Buffalo Bills players talking about him during the game last week where they're like, oh, man, that May something is special. That Drake guy is special. But you look at Drake May, he's got Jalen Polk, who's allergic to catching the football right now. You got Kendrick Bourne. It's like, who the heck do they got in New England? Booty, right? They got a former LSU wide receiver. They got nothing. Absolutely nothing right now in New England. And Drake May is doing a lot more than Caleb Williams with a lot less. So I think Drake May is going to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. I think this one will be controversial. I look at Bo Nix. Bo Nix has been really good. Bo Nix is going to finish in either second or third place for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I look at Bo Nix. I think he's more so a product of really good coaching with Sean Payton. Because it's not as if they have an incredible amount of talent around Bo Nix. And I've been impressed with Bo Nix, but I'm not ready to say that he is definitely a franchise guy. I think he's just a guy, but he could be the guy as long as Sean Payton continues to be his coach. Because, hey, if we're going to knock Caleb Williams and say he doesn't have the coaching, I can't crush Bo Nix for doing well in an advantageous spot. But if you put Bo Nix on example in Chicago, do I think Bo Nix is having this incredible rookie season? No, I do not. Trevor Lawrence. Right now, I think he's just a guy. And that's a team that I've been very disappointed with this year in the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I know that he's banged up and he's hurt, obviously, in Trevor Lawrence. But you look at where that team was 2 years ago. They survived Urban Meyer. They made the postseason. They had that crazy comeback up against the Los Angeles Chargers. You had Trevor Lawrence going to the Waffle House celebrating the playoff victory. It was awesome. And then last year, they got off to that quick start, really good start. Then, unfortunately, he got banged up. They were terrible down the stretch, and they were never able to recapture that magic from 2 years ago. So, Trevor Lawrence, I still think could be a really good quarterback in this league, but until I see it right now, I'm just saying he's a guy. CJ Stroud. I know that this has been a little bit of a fall off from year 1 to year 2. I know he has not played well in big games, but you're going to have the Texans in the playoffs back-to-back seasons. They got some work to do. They've had injuries. You see Nico Collins miss time. Obviously, Stephon Diggs got hurt. Now Tank Dell got hurt. That offensive line has been problematic in Houston. So it's not all on C.J. Stroud. And I think there are excuses to be made with C.J. Stroud, but I still believe he is a franchise quarterback. Anthony Richardson, not the guy. I just don't believe that Anthony Richardson ever puts it together for a 4 or 5 week stretch. All right, we've been hearing about him in Florida, how great he is, never fully put it together. And so far in the NFL, I know he got hurt last year, but I haven't really seen a quarterback that has resembled a lot of consistency. I think Anthony Richardson, an idea, can be a really good quarterback, but you're like picking, oh, well, he does this really well for 30% of the time. If he could do it like 80% of the time, well, that's a big disparity and difference in what you're asking for, and I've never seen it consistently from Anthony Richardson. So I say Anthony Richardson is not the guy. Bryce Young. You know what's wild about Bryce Young? If you were to ask me this question in September, every single Tom, Dick, and Harry, including myself, so I guess you say Tom, Dick, and Harry and Zach, would have said he's a bust, right? He's not the guy. Bryce Young now is a guy, and he's doing a nice job after he got benched in Carolina. And we talk about guys that are doing more with less. Outside of having Chuba Hubbard, what do they really got on the offensive side of the ball for the Carolina Panthers? You know, they got a good young play caller in Dave Canales. The line has been a lot improved over the last few years, but you don't have a number one weapon to throw the ball to in Carolina. You don't have a bona fide number one weapon. Like Joe Burrow has Jamar Chase. Sam Darnold has Justin Jefferson. Dak Prescott, when he plays, has CeeDee Lamb. Tua Tagovailoa has Tyreek Hill. There's not a number one guy for Bryce Young, and I'm still not ready to say that Bryce Young is the franchise quarterback, but Bryce Young is a guy right now. Will Levis, not the guy. And I think that was evident early on when every time Coach Callahan would go after him when he was quarterback in the Tennessee Titans, and now he's been benched. But Will Levis is going to be a backup quarterback in this league. And it's a shame because I like the personality of Will Levis. I always enjoy when we like to talk to him, when we get a chance to talk to him and he promotes like mayonnaise or whatever. But Will Levis is just not the guy. And it's kind of wild that there were talks of him potentially at one point being a top 10 pick. He falls all the way out of the second round. And it's just something about quarterbacks that fall out of the first round that end up getting drafted by the Tennessee Titans. I know that Malik Willis has had some moments this year with the Green Bay Packers, you know, when he was filling earlier in the season for Jordan Love. But what we saw with Will Levis was similar to Malik Willis when you look back at it. Both were projected to go first round. Both had massive falls out of the first round. At least Will Levis went in the second round. Malik Willis ended up going in the third round, but neither will end up being a franchise quarterback in this league. Okay. Michael Penix Jr. It's tough to have an evaluation right now. I will say a guy. You know, week 1 was fine. I'm not ready to say he's a franchise quarterback. He is not in a horrible situation. You got Bijan Robinson. You got Drake London. So you got enough foundation there. You play in a division that really, quite frankly, outside of the Bucs, is nothing really to sneeze at. And if the Bucs are the best team in your division, it's not as if that's some great division. But I got to see more out of Michael Penix Jr. Can't say he's a franchise quarterback yet, and can't say that he is not the guy. He is a guy, but he did look the role of a good quarterback in this league when he played the other day. And right now you just got to be able to manage the game, and you're able to even it back up, right, with the record standpoint. Now it's a tough one this week up against the Commanders, and I still think the Bucs are going to win that division. But this is a nice test these final 2 weeks for Michael Penix with the Atlanta Falcons. And finally, J.J. McCarthy, because I know he's going to be under great consideration and conversation this offseason on what the heck the Vikings should do. Should they bring back Sam Darnold, or should they turn the baton over to J.J. McCarthy? I think Sam Darnold's going to walk in this offseason, and they're going to cut corners in terms of price of what they're paying J.J. McCarthy. They're going to make him the guy in Minneapolis. But right now, I can't say he's not the guy. I can't say he's a franchise quarterback. I could say that he's just a guy. It stinks that you had the J.J. McCarthy injury happen this year, but Sam Darnold took that opportunity, and he did run with it. And now the Minnesota Vikings, who get the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. I kind of think McCarthy and Bo Nix, how we'll talk about them, can be very similar. Now, they have a lot more talent in Minnesota than they do at Denver. Like, you look at Minnesota's offense, you got Addison. Clearly, it starts with Jefferson. You got Hawkinson. You got also Aaron Jones as well. So J.J. McCarthy, I don't think has the ceiling of being a great quarterback. I think it's just a good quarterback. Just like Bo Nix, I don't look at him as someone that's ever going to be elite in this league. But you pair him with the right coach and you put him with the right situation, that could be your franchise quarterback, even if you don't ever think that either will be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. All righty, Zach Gelb here with you on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a time out. We'll come on back. We'll update you some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We will get to a news brief next, but first up with the latest Infinity Sports Network update, here is Erica Herskowitz.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
All right, Zach, we'll get it going with the hot stove baseball. His days in pinstripes are over. Two-time All-Star Gleyber Torres, no longer a Yankee. The 28-year-old free agent second baseman is headed to Detroit, coming to terms with the Tigers on a one-year deal worth $15 million. Week 17 in the NFL, Buccaneers head coach Todd Bowles is ruling out All-Pro safety Antoine Winfield Jr., tight end Cade Otton, and wide receiver Sterling Shepard for Sunday's game against the Panthers. The Bucs will likely need to win out to pull ahead of the Falcons, who hold the head-to-head tiebreaker over Tampa in order to advance to the postseason. Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts remains in concussion protocol, so Kenny Pickett's expected to make his first start Sunday against the Cowboys. And there's a chance Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins might be ready to go for tomorrow's game against the Broncos. The team expressing optimism today as Higgins tweaked his ankle last Sunday against the Browns and is listed as questionable. 5 bowl games on the schedule today, 1 in the books. Navy held off Oklahoma 21-20 to win the Armed Forces Bowl in Texas. Coming up, it'll be Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt playing in the Birmingham Bowl. I'm Erica Herskowitz.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Infinity Sports Network. That's Infinity Sports Network to follow us on Instagram.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
This is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
Alrighty, this is Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network on this Football Friday. It's time to ask the pros, where you, the listener, gets to ask us a question. It's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your question at INF Sportsnet or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Be listening later in the show. We might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Let's update you on some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We get to a news brief right now.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
So last night was a complete and utter disgrace in Chicago. The Seahawks didn't really play all that well, and the Bears were an unmitigated disaster, with the final score being 6-3. And what the Bears did on offense was offensive last night. It was really offensive. That was just terrible. The quarterback's confidence is already shot. The line is terrible. And the coach, who's the interim coach, it's just a catastrophe. And you know what? Nothing against Thomas Brown. But at the end of the year, I think he's probably happy that this is over. He went in just one season from the passing game coordinator to the interim offensive coordinator to the interim head coach. Like, only the Bears, right? The Bears. That could only happen in Chicago, where you got rid of your offensive coordinator because he was no good in Shane Waldron. Then you get rid of your head coach, and the guy who was the passing game coordinator, the interim offensive coordinator, ends up becoming the interim head coach. Just what a disaster. Here is Caleb Williams hearing the fans' frustration all throughout the game. And even afterwards, when the game was over, I thought that was the most entertaining part of the game. Afterwards, when you tune into the Prime Video with their post-game coverage, and you have all the Bears fans welcoming Carissa Thompson and Richard Sherman and Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tony Gonzalez and Andrew Whitworth. And it was just sell the team, sell the team, sell the team. That's what was being chanted. Here is Caleb Williams on the fans' frustration with the season.
Yeah, I've only been here for, it's my first year. So, their frustrations, go way longer back than I've been here. My job is to, go out there and win games. And, we don't focus on outside noise. The fans are, they're going to cheer and maybe boo sometimes. And, you can't react to that. It's not something that, we react to. We have a job to do. Sometimes, you don't do so well on the job some days, and some days you're pretty consistent. Some days you play a great game. So,
Like, does anyone walk away feeling confident after hearing Caleb Williams speak? We try to tune out the noise. How about just saying, we've sucked. The fans have every right to boo us and chant whatever they want. We have been an embarrassment for the last 10 weeks, and we will do our best this offseason to prevent this from ever happening again. I don't blame them. That was just 45 seconds of rambling. I actually felt bad for him. I was hoping they would play the award music. Not that the Bears are winning any awards anyway this year. And you kind of just will have him walk off the stage. And you just fade out his microphone. Oh, my goodness gracious. That's the leader of your team. That's supposed to be the face of your franchise. And that's why I really believe, when you see it on the field, but even afterwards, he's got to do a little bit more that inspires you to even make a crappy situation, at least have lipstick put on a pig, and he can't even do that right now. So he can't produce on the field, and then off the field, when he talks to the media, he doesn't give you any confidence as well. That's ugly. That is really ugly right now. I'll tell you, the most exciting part was that Prime Video broadcast last night after the game when the fans were chanting sell the teams. They do a lot. They do a lot in that post-game show for Prime Video. Every week there's some bit. This week, Ryan Fitzpatrick had to go into an ice bath. Or no, it was Richard Sherman that had to go into an ice bath for some bet that he lost. You know what it kind of reminds me of? Like when Maggie and Perloff first got her to the network. Every week there was some bet and there was some punishment. And that's what it's like with this Prime Video show. They do a game every post game. There is some sort of game. It's really wild. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, Azaram. Alex Azaram's here today. Have you ever heard of the Wiener Circle in Chicago?
The Wiener Circle? No, I've never heard of that.
So the Wiener Circle is a famous hot dog stand in Chicago. And basically, when it gets late at night at the Wiener Circle, they basically just berate their customers. So if you walk up and you're not ready to go, they're cursing at you, they're yelling at you, they're treating you like garbage. There's been a lot of viral videos. They brought the lady from the Wiener Circle, that's the famous lady behind the counter that's always yelling at all the customers, to the Prime Video set last night. to berate all the talent, of course, in somewhat of a PG-13 way on the broadcast. She was going after Taylor Rooks, Carissa Thompson, Richard Sherman, Andrew Whitworth.
It was just a bit?
Yeah, it was a bit. They do a lot of bits. A lot of bits on Prime Video. It's crazy how long their post-game coverage is. It's got to be at least 45 minutes to an hour. Usually, right, post-game, you have an opinion or two off the game. You do 2 segments max. No. This is like 4 segments, I feel like. And there's always a bit, and then they always talk about someone behind the scenes in that city. Like the Ravens, they did some like equipment manager or something a few weeks ago. But anyway, let's hear Kirk Herbstreit. This was on Prime Video, Thursday Night Football, and Caleb Williams' struggles.
We've seen Caleb Williams tonight with his playmaking ability, make so many spectacular plays, and he's got such physical ability. I think the thing that remains to be seen, and only time will tell, is if he understands what it takes to be an NFL quarterback as far as the preparation, as far as first guy there, last guy to leave. And I'm not suggesting he's not doing those things, but just all of the little things that really make the great quarterbacks special.
Yeah, I don't know if he puts in the preparation or not. I don't think that's fair for us to critique unless if you are in that building or you're hearing things in that building where people are saying the other part of it. But I want to it's tough for me to evaluate. You know what this feels like? This feels like Trevor Lawrence with Urban Meyer. That's what this feels like. Where the coaching has been so bad, I can't really even fairly evaluate the quarterback. And next year, we'll see if we can accurately evaluate the quarterback. Because whoever's coaching this team next year, it can't be worse than what you had this year with Eberflus and then also Thomas Brown. Let's go to Cam Newton. He was on his 4th and 1 podcast. He rips baseball and says the WNBA will pass Major League Baseball one day.
Baseball is like I hate to say a dying sport. I think baseball will be surpassed by WNBA in 20 years. Baseball ain't even being played by Americans anymore. But that's all I'm saying, bro. For those who take offense to it, it's just the truth. No. It's like, who's really paying attention to baseball? Especially paying attention to baseball in the regular season.
I don't get the point of, it's not even being played by Americans. Like, do I care whether Shohei Ohtani's from America or not? No, he's a very entertaining baseball player. Cam's probably one of those guys that says, if you haven't played it, you can't critique it, right? And then sometimes just because you have a platform, you could say stupid things. I'm not saying baseball's the most popular sport in the world. Baseball has work to do. But the WNBA is going to surpass Major League Baseball. Like, what happens when Caitlin Clark retires? Seriously. There's a lot of good players in the WNBA, but the only player that really resonates a reaction nationally is Caitlin Clark. And the WNBA tries to take away all the time her platform and her shine because they think they should be highlighting the entire league when a lot of people just care about Caitlin Clark. I'm not saying there's not other talented stars, but yeah, I'm not ready to say that the WNBA is going to surpass Major League Baseball. And when he said the next 20 years, that's a pretty long range, if I may say so myself. Here is Bart Scott on the ESPN saying, do a little commentary on Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson for MVP.
If Josh Allen leaves and gets knocked out of the playoffs and he wins MVP, he's probably going to see that as a successful season because he proved that he didn't need a number one. If Lamar Jackson gets an MVP and loses, he'll view that as a disappointment. So that lets you know probably how the two even views their success with the MVP differently.
Based on what part? That's dumb. That's just dumb commentary. So Josh Allen, since he hasn't won the MVP before, he's going to view this season as a success when we all know that Josh Allen's one of the better quarterbacks in the league, MVP or not. And what does everyone just kind of say about Josh Allen? But can you win and beat the Kansas City Chiefs and lead the Bills to a Super Bowl? Like, the Bills are Super Bowl or bust now. This idea that we're going to be sitting here if the Bills lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs and Josh Allen happens to be the MVP this year and go, Josh Allen now views that season as a success. No way. No way in a million years will Josh Allen ever say that, or will people look at it that way? And for Lamar, yeah, it's the same thing. He's got to go win a Super Bowl. Now, I know that Lamar's won 2 MVPs, So winning another MVP right now, it's impressive, but I think a lot of us will just say, all right, cool, but now can you win the big game? But it doesn't mean for Josh Allen we go, oh, yeah, nice job. Now you got the MVP, so now we can acknowledge you're a great quarterback. Go get him next year, Tiger. Go get him next year, Sport. Too bad you didn't win the Super Bowl this year. No, they're in a win-now mode right now, the Buffalo Bills. May not have been the case before the start of the season, but with how open the NFL is right now, yeah, you got to go win, especially when you once again, for a fourth time in a row, have found a way to take care of business up against the Chiefs in the regular season. You got to get the job done in the postseason, and you got to go win that Lombardi. And it's a failure or it's a success, depending on if you win that Lombardi trophy or not, for both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network. We'll do some NFL coaching hiring cycle predictions next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. 45 seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
And away we go, hour number 2 of our radio program. It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll do some NFL picks coming up an hour and 20 minutes from now with Shaun Morash, who's going to stop by. He'll be our guest picker for this week. You know, we've been talking about the coaching carousel. And we know the Bears have a vacancy, we know the Saints have a vacancy, and we know the Jets have a vacancy. So I got in the lab this morning, and I was trying to figure out, even with whatever I said in the past, what are we going to look at all the openings in the NFL? Who are they going to be? And who are going to be the coaches that end up getting hired? And I think it's pretty easy in the first 2 names, right? When you do this exercise, you got to place... With Belichick now back at UNC coaching in college for some reason, you got to place Mike Vrabel and you got to place Ben Johnson. Those are the 2 biggest dominoes to fall. And once those 2 dominoes fall, then you could get into the Cliff Kingsburys of the world, the Brian Floreses of the world. Do we see a Pete Carroll return? That name has been hot in the last 48 hours with Pete getting his name out there once again with the Bears opening. A Liam Cohen, a Joe Brady, an Aaron Glenn. There are a few names also that pretty much everyone has been talking about. But the 2 biggest names, I would say, are Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, and then you could also throw Pete Carroll in that realm. But I don't know if Pete Carroll's going to be coaching next year. I guess with Belichick being off the board and Belichick being at UNC, if you want to bring in, even though Pete's status isn't as legendary as Bill, but a guy that's going to be in the Hall of Fame, a guy that has won a Super Bowl in this league, has been well respected in this league, and also he's easier to work with, right? Pete Carroll is more player-friendly, organizational-friendly than Bill Belichick ever was. So I look at those 3 names, and I'm like, are we going to place Pete Carroll somewhere? And then where do we place Vrabel, and where do we place also Ben Johnson? But let's talk about the other jobs that are going to open up first. And I've had a change of heart with one. I'll get to that in just a second. But we know that the Bears are already open, the Saints are already open, and the Jets are already open. I think only 3 more jobs are going to open up. I think Jacksonville will open at the end of the year. I'm going to assume they clean house. The Giants, even though I have been for most of the season up until this last month that Shane and Daboll will be back and Mara doesn't want to get rid of him. I don't think Mara wants to get rid of him. But at this point, never winning a home game this year. Your team is abysmal. I think it's a move where I said it all year long with the Giants. You could be bad, but you can't be embarrassing. And the Giants have been so embarrassing this year that ultimately I do think that the Giants are going to see a head coaching change and probably a GM change as well. Because I don't love, in this particular case, keeping the GM, getting rid of the coach, or keeping the coach and getting rid of the GM. But then here's the other name. And it took me a while to come around on this. And I even said this yesterday, that I've struggled with this in separating what should happen and what will happen. And I said, when it comes to Antonio Pierce, that I thought the Raiders were going to bring him back. The more and more people that I talk to, whether they are plugged in NFL circles or they just, right, are talk show hosts, people that talk on a daily basis and they speculate on the Raiders. You know, it's one thing when you have talk show hosts saying, hey, Antonio Pierce is going to be one and done. But when you start to hear more and more chatter from inside league circles, you know, inside NFL teams, that the expectation is that Antonio Pierce is going to be one and done, that's when you got to start to take it seriously. So I look at the Raiders, even though I've been hesitant, even though I would understand why you would get rid of Antonio Pierce, but he doesn't have a lot to work with, doesn't have a quarterback. There's not a lot of talent on that team. Yeah, you got Crosby who's hurt. You got Wilkins. You know, you got Brock Bowers. That was a good draft pick, clearly, and he's had a sensational rookie season. But there's not a lot of foundational pieces. That team, with what happened with Gruden and Mayock, then also what happened with Ziegler and McDaniels, they got a lot, and I mean a lot, to end up fixing with the silver and black. But I got a feeling with now Brady coming in as a minority owner, and he's not going to be your stereotypical minority owner who you're there, but how much power do you really have? I think Mark Davis is really going to allow Brady to have his hands in a lot of these decisions in terms of which quarterback they're going to take and also who's going to be coaching the team. Can I see Telesco surviving? I could. It would not shock me if Tom Telesco, and I do think if you get rid of Pierce, which I think they will now, you should get rid of Telesco as well. But I was talking to somebody today, and I said to them, you know, would it really surprise you? And they said no. Would it really surprise you if Brady hires one of his guys to be the head coach, and the guy that he hires to be the head coach, he really knows that Brady's running the show, and you'll let the GM still be the GM, and then you'll reconvene a year from now when, let's say, whoever that coach may be, which I'll get to in a second, doesn't get along with Telesco, and then they blow out Telesco a year from now, and that person said it would not shock him. So those are the jobs that I think will be open. Bears are already open. Saints are already open. Jets are already open. And I think the Jaguars, the Giants, and the Raiders will join the party. Who else could potentially open up? Those are the only ones I'm predicting. I think McCarthy is going to be back. There is no one else that you could see in the there's no one in the NFC West, the NFC North. The Bears are the only team that's up for consideration. You know, if the Bucs don't make the playoffs, could they get rid of Todd Bowles? I guess, but I don't think that's necessary, and I don't think that's warranted. And I don't think that should happen. So I'm going to say no on that, but could you see a team like the Bears, like the Bucs, maybe go big swinging? You know, we were talking about, a dark horse destination for Bill Belichick being Tampa Bay. Could you see maybe the Bucs being a team that takes a swing on a Pete Carroll? Yeah, I guess it's a possibility, right? You had Bruce Arians in there, and Bruce Arians and Pete Carroll, not that they're the same, but they're similar. So that would not shock me. And then when you look at the AFC, any other surprise openings? If Stefanski wants out, I don't think the Browns will look to move on from Stefanski, but if Stefanski wants out, then maybe that could be a different conversation. I do think there's a road for Stefanski to force himself out of the Browns organization. Maybe if you say, hey, you either got to pick me or the quarterback and then see what the Haslam family elects to do. So I feel pretty good that those are going to be the 6 and only 6 jobs that are open. Now let's place a few names to a few teams. I'll give you my first crack at this, first opportunity, and we will do this right today on December 27th. And I don't know if we'll do this every week, but we will probably do it another time or two before most of these moves end up getting made. So let me start with where we're going to place Ben Johnson. So for most of this time, I've said with the Bears, the safest hire is Mike Vrabel. I think Vrabel's going to go elsewhere. I think Vrabel would take the Bears job, but the most coveted name on the market, and he's unproven as a head coach because he's never been a head coach before, is Ben Johnson. And last night shouldn't be the realization that the Bears need Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson, he could be a bizarre cat. He could be someone that is very picky. We all thought he was going to coach the Commanders last year. We all thought that he was going to have the 2nd overall pick in the draft. But I think still people believe in the NFL that Caleb Williams could be a really good quarterback. Now, I'm concerned about his confidence. I'm concerned about his confidence already getting broken. But if you need to repair that confidence, I think that kind of makes it, not that it has to happen, but I think the Bears will approach this as they're going to need an offensive-minded coach. And I think they're going to want to go younger. And I think they're going to want to bring in the hot commodity right now and hope that this is like a Sean McVay 2.0. I'm going to say the Bears. I'll predict that the Bears end up hiring Ben Johnson. So that's the first one. Now, let's place Mike Vrabel somewhere, because after that, then it gets really tricky. I think the Raiders are going to end up getting rid of Antonio Pierce, which is the first time I've said that all year, surprisingly. And I believe that Tom Brady's going to place a phone call to his former teammate and his friend in Mike Vrabel. And I believe that Mike Vrabel is going to be the next head football coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. And Brady will say to Mike Vrabel, hey, we'll either pick a new GM now, if you have someone, or just trust me for a year. I like Tom Telesco. Let's see what Tom Telesco could do, right? Longtime NFL general manager, was with the Chargers forever. And just give him another year, see if you guys can work it out. And if not, you'll have my word. This will kind of be like hush, hush, wink, wink behind the scenes. You have my word that I'll still have a lot to say, a lot of input. We'll get you what you want. And if you guys can't see eye to eye at the end of the season, then we'll move on from Tom Telesco. But I do think that the next coach of the Raiders is going to be Mike Vrabel. So Bears, Ben Johnson, Raiders, Mike Vrabel. And that leaves us with 4 teams left. And when you look at what's the most desirable situation, is it the Giants with Malik Neighbors, and you're probably going to have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. So whether that's Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, whatever your preference is, you could go to that situation. But outside of that, there's not a lot around them. You know, on offense, yeah, Tyrone Tracy Jr. is a solid running back. The line is still problematic with the New York Giants. Defensively, you got a few players, Dexter Lawrence being one. But that's a team that you got a lot of work to do. And there's a reason why the Giants have just been one big fat joke outside of that 1 year where Daniel Jones somehow, along with Brian Daboll in his first year, got double-digit wins, and they ended up winning a playoff game that year before tapping out in the second round up against the Eagles. So do you view the Giants in that situation? The Jets, will Rodgers be back? If Rodgers isn't back, who's going to be your quarterback? You do have a roster with some young, talented players like a Sauce Gardner, a Garrett Wilson. You got Quinnen Williams. So that's kind of the Jets. The Jaguars. It's either you believe that Trevor Lawrence is fixable or he's not. Got a bad bill of health the last 2 years, but if you believe he's fixable, then you look at that division. Texans have taken a step back. The Titans are nowhere close to competing. The Colts, we don't even know if they have their quarterback. I don't think Anthony Richardson is a franchise quarterback. So that's a division that you could very quickly change things overnight and find a way to get to the top of that division. And then you look at the Saints. You know what? Out of those 4 jobs, I think the Saints are the least desirable. And I know people will say, oh, well, what about the Giants? Oh, what about the Jets? Zach, the Jaguars. Come on, Trevor Lawrence isn't the guy. You could at least still sell me that if you're a coach looking for a job, that you could fix Trevor Lawrence. You know, when I look at the Jets, I don't think they should bring Rodgers back. But if it's Rodgers for a year, you have talent on that roster, and then a year from now you go get that guy in a draft class this year, which is not great outside. Like, I like Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. You know, I don't know how many great, though, quarterbacks there are in this draft class. You know, you can at least sell me more on some patience with the Jets. The Jaguars, all right? It's either you like Trevor Lawrence. Like, what do you sell me on with the Saints? You still have that Derek Carr contract. Right now, you'd be the 10th overall pick in the draft. And you have a lot of guys still from the Sean Payton days who are just getting older and older and older. Like, Chris Olave's a solid wide receiver. But I look, you know, he's an in-between a 1 and a 2 wide receiver. That roster is probably the least attractive when you look at not only where the roster is, but what are you selling me on for your future? Like the Bears, at least you could still sell me on Caleb Williams. The Raiders, right now they're the 6th overall pick, but maybe you could trade on up. You know, I know there's not a lot with the Raiders, but it's Las Vegas, and I think Brady's going to find a way to get Vrabel out there, so that's a little bit different. The Giants, the Jets, the Jaguars, they're not great jobs, but I think they're in better positions to sell themselves than the Saints. So let me look at the job that if I am a head coach and you ask me Giants, Jets, Jaguars, or Saints, where would you want to go? My decision would be between two teams. If those are the four teams, my decision would be between the Giants and it'd be between the Jaguars. And I know the Giants have been a clown show, but you got Neighbors on the outside, and you're probably going to have Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. If I'm getting 3 years, and here's the trick, like the Giants walked in not thinking that Daniel Jones was their guy, this new regime. And then Daniel Jones played really well, and they had to give him that contract. They initially did not pick up his fifth-year option, this regime. So, with all that being said, I do think that you'll get 3 years with the Giants with a young quarterback coming in. If it is Shedeur, though, you always have to have that fear in the back of your head. When Coach Prime says he wants to coach his son, will that end up happening? So I would say if I'm making that decision, Giants, Jets, Jaguars, or Saints, it's Giants and Jaguars that I would most be inclined to take because of Neighbors and whoever the young quarterback's going to be. And for the Jaguars, it's either, hey, you believe that you could fix Trevor Lawrence or not. So when we get to predicting some names here, I'll start with the Giants. I'm going to say the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, is going to be their next head football coach. And what a rise this guy's had. You know, he knows Sean McVay, worked for McVay with the Rams, been back and forth with the Rams, Kentucky and the Rams, and now is the offensive coordinator with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is a hot name after you get past Ben Johnson in terms of offensive coaching in this league and guys that are looking for head coaching jobs this year. So I think the Giants, they kind of try to do once again what they did with Vrabel, right? Offensive coordinator. This time, though, you'll take Liam Cohen and you'll bring a new regime into the New York Football Giants. Now for the Jaguars. I wonder if the Jaguars are going to say, we're going to put an end to a trend. The Jaguars have been big name hunting the last two hires. Urban Meyer, big name. Doug Peterson, Super Bowl champion, big name. I think the Jaguars know they got to get a guy that they know is going to work here. So could they take a risk on a younger offensive coordinator like a Joe Brady or a Liam Cohen? Yes, they can. But I think the Jaguars are going to continue to go older. And even though they thought that was going to work with the Doug Peterson, it did not. Did win him a playoff game, but that was about it. It's been a disaster the last 2 years. I think Pete wants to coach. And what Pete has going for him that Bill Belichick didn't is the fact that people actually like Pete Carroll. And Bill Belichick is rough around the edges and tough to get along with. That's why I didn't get the Falcons job. So I'm going to say the Jaguars, my first prediction for the Jaguars job is going to be Pete Carroll. So then that leaves me with the Jets and the Saints. I'll do the Jets first. I think the Jets are going to bring in Joe Brady. And I think that the Jets are going to hope that Joe Brady is kind of like Matt LaFleur, where even if you need to have Aaron Rodgers back for a year, they will be able to make that relationship work. And I know the Jets, could they draft a quarterback this year? I guess it's possible. Personally, I would wait a year where they're currently sitting in the draft order with the 9th overall pick. Shedeur and Cam aren't going to be there. I'm not using the 9th overall pick on a quarterback that is not named Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward this year, and they'll be long gone by then. So I think the Jets are going to try to kind of get a guy like LaFleur, younger, offensive-minded coach that could have some thick skin, can deal with Rodgers' BS if they do bring back Rodgers for one more year. But if not, then you rip off the Band-Aid and you have Joe Brady bring in maybe one of these journeyman quarterbacks to see if you could just put it together this upcoming year and salvage this young core that you do have. And then a year from now, you're taking the young offensive-minded coach in Joe Brady and you're putting him with whoever quarterback that you do draft in the first round a year from now. Or if you're not that bad enough, maybe you find a way to orchestrate a trade. So I'm going to say Joe Brady with the Jets. And then finally, I wanted to place Brian Flores somewhere. And I was between Brian Flores or Aaron Glenn. and I ended up saying that the Saints are going to end up hiring Aaron Glenn. I think if I'm Flores, who I think is a better name than Aaron Glenn and a better coach than Aaron Glenn, I would wait another year. And I know the lawsuit could get a little bit tricky, but if you're not having these marquee jobs, and some of these jobs, it's slim pickings, if I'm being honest. But if it's a job that you don't love, I would wait until a year from now, because you will continue to be a name that we'll always be talking about, especially with the job that he's been doing the last few years with the Minnesota Vikings. So first attempt at it, I think 6 jobs will open up. Bears, Ben Johnson. Raiders, Mike Vrabel. Giants, Liam Cohen. Jaguars, Pete Carroll. Jets, Joe Brady. And then the Saints going with Aaron Glenn. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will look back at redrafting the quarterbacks for the 2024 NFL Draft Class next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. 45 seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Sleeper. Just download the Sleeper app today and use code SCORE when signing up. Must be present in certain states. Visit sleeper.com for details. Sponsored by Sleeper, a Blitz product. I'm actually going to a bowl game tomorrow. So I am going to Yankee Stadium, noon Eastern time. I'm going to see Nebraska with Dylan Raiola go up against Bill O'Brien's Boston College team in the Pinstripe Bowl. So not that I have been a big bowl season guy outside of the college football playoff, but you have the Cornhuskers and you have the Eagles of BC. So I will be finding a way to go to Yankee Stadium tomorrow and going to be enjoying my time. So if you want to follow maybe any of the behind-the-scenes actions of that, you could go on social media at Zach Gelb, Twitter and Instagram, ZACHGELB. Bowl season, it's funny now. It's been heating up, and you see some of the way that these games have been playing out. I saw Navy today beat Oklahoma 21-20. Last night you had that crazy Toledo-Pittsburgh game. So some of these games have just been wild, but now with the 12-team playoff, even when you had the 4-team playoff, there were still those New Year's 6 games, so that was always big. But the rest of the other bowl games, it's cool still for the kids because you get a whole bowl week. Like the Nebraska team has been here since Monday, or Sunday night or Monday, and they do things all throughout the week in the city. So it's cool, right? Bonding experience for a team, and it gives kids a reward for getting at least 6 wins in a season. But some of these games, you see them, and you go, oh, I can't even believe that ends up, being a bowl game. Like Rutgers last night gagged one away, and you had Kansas State win 44-41. Toledo with the 6 overtimes taking care of Pitt 48-46. And, there's not a lot of times that you go into these games now, and you're like, oh, I'm fired up, to see Louisiana against TCU, right? Some of these, Miami and Colorado State. I did see a lot because of all the social media stuff, BYU and Colorado, right, as you have that game. But, a lot of these bowl games that aren't college football playoff games now, it's like, so what? And then you see people talking about them on social media, like last night with the Toledo-Pittsburgh game. It's like, oh, it's in the third overtime. It's like, yeah. You turn it on, you check it out, and you see how it is. And if you're gambling on it, then obviously you'll be emotionally invested and financially invested with it into, in some capacity as well. But when you get to the NFL draft from last year, we saw 6 quarterbacks go in the first 12 picks. You had Caleb Williams going to the Bears, Jaden Daniels going to the Commanders at 2, Drake May going to the Pats at 3. In at number 8, you had Michael Penix Jr. surprisingly going to the Atlanta Falcons. The Vikings had to trade up to 10. They moved up 1 spot to get J.J. McCarthy, and then Bo Nix ends up going 12 to the Denver Broncos. So just those 6 quarterbacks, if they were getting redrafted today, with what we've seen so far this season, where would they go? I think the number 1 overall pick would be Jaden Daniels. And you know what? I'm actually upset with myself looking back, because I don't know if there was a national radio host that kind of sang the praises of one Jaden Daniels leading up to the draft more than me. I wanted my football team to get him. I was so mad when my football team won a game towards the end of the year and it knocked him down to the 3rd overall pick, because I thought Jaden Daniels was going to go too. And his rise, it's crazy to say this for a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, his rise happened really damn quickly. Like, I was at the Heisman, And I was saying to him, there was that morning, McAfee had Herb Street on. And McAfee, Herb Street said to McAfee, Jaden Daniels, whoever gets him, they're going to be really happy. And he's going to be the steal of the draft. And I remember talking to Jaden Daniels. I said, is it kind of a little disrespectful when people say you're going to be the steal of the draft? Because that means you're not going to go very early on in the draft. And Daniels just kept on rising and rising and rising. And hopefully did rise to the second overall pick. But here's why I'm upset. Because I've said this to people. I thought he was the best quarterback in the draft class, but then when I still did my rankings, I'm like, everyone's saying Williams is the best. So you know what? Even though I think it could be Daniels, I'll put Williams 1 and I'll put Daniels 2. But I may have done it. I never do this, the 1-1A. But I think I did it for that draft conversation, which it still bugs me to this day. And right, you live, you learn lesson. Okay, just go with what your gut's telling you instead of maybe what your brain is from other outside influences. I'm more of a trust my gut guy than the brain. The gut has never failed me. And if it has ever failed me, I'll just use Pepto-Bismol. But the brain has failed me a lot in my life. But when we go through here, if we were redrafting these quarterbacks, I think the Bears would take Daniels 1. And here's the best endorsement that I could give Daniels. If I put him in Chicago this year, even with that horrible, and I mean rancid coaching staff, and that abysmal offensive line, I would still trust Jaden Daniels more than Caleb Williams to make plays and to stop the bleeding. Caleb Williams has not been able to stop the bleeding even for one game in that 10-game losing streak. I'm not asking you to be Joe Montana overnight or Steve Young overnight, right? I'm just asking you to stop the bleeding, and he hasn't been able to do that in this 10-game losing streak. So I think the Bears would take Daniels 1. With what I've seen so far, and right, he has less than what Caleb Williams has, I think the Commanders would end up taking Drake May 2. I would still think the Patriots would then go Caleb Williams at 3. So you'd still have 3 quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, but instead of it being Williams to the Bears, Daniels to the Commanders, May to the Patriots, if you could redraft it, I think it would be Daniels to the Bears. You would then have May to the Commanders, and then you would have Williams to the Patriots. I think the Bears would be in a better spot. I think the Commanders could be just as close to the spot that they're in right now if it was with Drake May. Williams, with not having a good situation in Chicago, but it's much better with the Patriots, I actually think it'd be worse in New England. Right? Drake May has been able to hide a lot this year in New England, and they still stink. So that's what I think the first 3 picks would be. I don't think the Cardinals would take a quarterback. They ended up taking Marvin Harrison Jr. The Chargers would not take a quarterback. They ended up taking Joe Alt. The Giants. That's fascinating. So you got 3 guys off the board. Would you have taken Michael Penix Jr.? Would you have taken Bo Nix? Would you have taken J.J. McCarthy? Now, at that time, Michael Penix Jr. was still available. J.J. McCarthy was still available, and Bo Nix was still available. I still think that the Giants would say, okay, we'll punt another year on the quarterback, even though that could end up getting Shannon Daboll fired because it could have reset their time clock. But the Giants now are going to have probably the first or second pick of the draft. So you get Neighbors, and now you compare him with the young quarterback. I would still say that the Giants would keep Neighbors now looking back at it with who those other options were available. Because if you ask yourself, would you rather have Shedeur or Bo Nix? I'd rather have Shedeur. Would you rather have Shedeur if, let's say, Shedeur is your number 1 quarterback? Would you rather have Shedeur or J.J. McCarthy? I'd rather have Shedeur. Would you rather have Shedeur or Michael Penix Jr.? Tougher decision, but I think Shedeur could do more with less than Michael Penix can, so I'd rather have Shedeur. I think Tennessee would now, looking back at it, take a quarterback. And in that case, I would believe that they would have selected Michael Penix Jr. So I think Michael Penix Jr. Actually, no. With what we've seen, I actually think it would have been Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix would have been 7th to the Tennessee Titans. Now, with that being said, do I think Bo Nix is having this phenomenal season without Sean Payton? I do not. You got some weapons there in Tennessee. Hopkins was there to start the season. Now he's no longer there. You got Calvin Ridley. Tony Pollard was there. So you have some things to work with, but not a ton. But I think those would be the first 4 quarterbacks taken. if we redrafted them, I do believe Daniels would go to the Bears, Drake would go to the Commanders, Caleb would go to the Patriots, Cardinals, Chargers, Giants, still wouldn't take quarterbacks. I think Bo Nix would go to the Tennessee Titans. I then think the Falcons would pass on a quarterback. I don't think they would have taken, well, you know what? Check that. It's Michael Penix Jr., so they would have taken Michael Penix Jr. still. Yeah, so they still would have taken Michael Penix Jr. And then it's okay, where does McCarthy go? I don't think the Bears, they already took a quarterback there, so then it would end up being McCarthy to the Vikings. So looking back at that, only 2 quarterbacks wouldn't change. McCarthy would still be in Minnesota. Now, if you knew that Sam Darnold was going to break out, do you pass on Sam? That's a conversation. I guess that's a possibility. And if that's the case, then, I know Sean Payton didn't love J.J. McCarthy, but then maybe he goes to the Broncos at 12 or possibly the Raiders 13. But I would still say that the Vikings, I don't think they regret trading up for McCarthy, because even though Sam has had a really good year, I do believe they're going to let Sam Darnold walk. So even though that got a little bit confusing, as I sat there, I was like, what would Tennessee do? And I thought Penix, I'm like, it'd probably be Bo Nix. I would say if we had to redraft those 6 quarterbacks in the first round, once again, Daniels would go to the Bears now. Drake May would go to the Commanders. The Patriots would end up taking Caleb Williams. No quarterbacks going 4, 5, 6. Tennessee would then take Bo Nix. Falcons would still be able to gobble up Michael Penix Jr., and then the Vikings would still be able to gobble up J.J. McCarthy. Okay, we'll take a break. It is a Friday. Alex's arm's got some questions. I'll try to give him some answers. We do this segment every Monday and Friday right here on the Infinity Sports Network on the Zach Gelb Show. It's called Onside Offside. We'll get to that next. Update time first. Here is Erica Herskowitz.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
All right, Zach, we got 5 bowl games on the schedule today in college football. The second of the day is in full swing. It is the Birmingham Bowl. Second quarter, Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt are tied at 7. Earlier today, Navy held off Oklahoma 21-20 to win the Armed Forces Bowl in Texas. And tonight, Texas Tech meets Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl. Then number 21, Syracuse takes on Washington State in the Holiday Bowl before USC plays Texas A&M in the Las Vegas Bowl. From baseball today, 2-time All-Star Gleyber Torres no longer a Yankee. The 28-year-old free agent headed to the Motor City, coming to terms with the Tigers on a 1-year deal worth $15 million. Week 17 in the NFL, Buccaneers head coach Todd Bowles ruling out All-Pro safety Antoine Winfield Jr., tight end Cade Otton, and wide receiver Sterling Shepard for Sunday's game against the Panthers. Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts remains in concussion protocol, so Kenny Pickett is expected to make his first start Sunday against the Cowboys. And there's a chance Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins might be ready to go for tomorrow against the Broncos. The team expressing optimism today as Higgins tweaked his ankle last Sunday against the Browns and remains listed as questionable. I'm Erica Herskowitz.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Zach's taking on the most polarizing issues in sports. Which side of the line of scrimmage will he end up on?
Offside. Defense number 69.
It's Onsides, Offsides with Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, onside, offside time right now. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Alex Azarum is sitting in today for Stuart Kovacs, and he's got our questions today. Alex?
All right, first up, let's hope that tomorrow's games is not as bad as last night's. Tomorrow,
I would hope. I would hope that's the case.
I mean, the bar is low. So tomorrow we got a triple header, but maybe the biggest game is the 7-8 Bengals against the 9-6 Broncos. A win will not only get the Bengals to 500, but will move them one game back of Denver for the final spot of the wild card. Onside, offside, if the Bengals make the playoffs, they can make a run to the AFC Championship game.
This is offside, and here's why. I would love to see the Bengals get into the playoffs because I understand the idea of it, that if they get in, maybe they could become dangerous. And we've seen them before take down Kansas City when it matters. But this defense stinks. Like, you look at what Joe Burrow's doing right now. He's first in passing yards, first in touchdowns, and we're talking about this team having an outside chance to make the postseason. Trey Hendrickson has been a stud. But you look at their wins this year, they got 7 wins. They beat Carolina when they stunk. They beat the Giants, who stink. They beat the Browns, who stink. They beat the Raiders, who stink. They beat the Cowboys, who stink. They beat the Tennessee Titans. Guess what? They stink. And they beat the Cleveland Browns, who stink. So, yes, they would beat 2 teams that are solid teams, good teams, in the Broncos and the Pittsburgh Steelers. But in order to make the AFC Championship game, you're going to have to beat one of either the Ravens or the Bills, or maybe even the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know they lost to the Chiefs this year by only 1. They lost to the Ravens twice after blowing both those leads, and they haven't played Buffalo yet. So even if they got into the playoffs, which I don't think is happening, and they won their first round game, which they'd probably be the 7, so you play in the 2. So let's say that's Buffalo. Then you got to beat, in all likelihood, the Chiefs, or would then be the 1. Like, you're telling me that's going to happen? I don't think that they're going to be able to, A, make the playoffs, nor win 2 games. So, onside, offside, if the Bengals make the playoffs, they can make a run to the AFC title game. Not this year, Alex. Offside.
Offside.
Next question.
All right, so the Eagles are fighting for the first seed of the NFC, but they will be, it is official now, Jalen Hurts is out for the game with a concussion. Kenny Pickett will be getting the start in his place after a respectable performance last week with 143 yards and a touchdown when Hurts went out of the rest of the game. Onside, offside, Kenny Pickett can still be a full-time starting QB in the NFL.
Chris in California, I think, is the caller who was the first one to predict that Kenny Pickett was going to go to the Philadelphia Eagles via a trade. Now, he thought he was going to be a full-time starter. That's not the case. Kenny Pickett was fine last week. When I say fine, it's not a great thing. You know, he wasn't spectacular. He wasn't horrific. But he was okay. He's just a guy. He's a backup quarterback. If he has to start a few games, okay. But a full-time starter, absolutely not. I'm going to go offsides on that one.
Offside.
You know it's even bad when you haven't even heard from Chris in California after Kenny Pickett played last week, that he hasn't been able to call in at 855-212-4227 and spin it into some great positive, and why this shows that Kenny Pickett should be the guy in Philadelphia. That's how you know that it was just like, with what you saw last week. All right, next question.
Sticking with the NFC East, CeeDee Lamb has been shut down by the Cowboys for the last 2 games of the season as he was battling through a shoulder injury throughout the whole year. Dak Prescott is already out for the year, and the rumors are swirling about Mike McCarthy and the team possibly trading superstar Micah Parsons. Onside, offside, Mike McCarthy, Dak, CeeDee, and Micah will all be back for next season.
This is a crazy question, because if you asked this to me about a month and a half ago, I would say McCarthy's gone, Dak is back, CeeDee is back, and maybe they trade Micah, but they'll probably bring him back. I think Micah will be back. CeeDee obviously will be back. Dak will be back. Dak is back. All right. And also, I think Big Mike McCarthy's coming on back for one more season at least as well. So, yes, McCarthy, Dak, CeeDee, and Micah will all be back with the Cowboys in 2025. I'm going on sides. Next question.
All right. Well, Tom Brady, now retired, is
Well, you say that correctly. The greatest quarterback of all time, the 7-time Super Bowl winning quarterback, phenomenal NFL on Fox analyst. I don't even know if I believe that. Also, minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, Thomas Effin Brady. I know.
Edward,
yeah, but it just sounds better when you say Effin in that case. But go ahead.
Like you said, he is a minority owner for the Raiders. Another role he has in the league, though, is one of the AP's 50 votes for the postseason awards, which is a major conflict of interest, it feels like. So onside, offside, Tom Brady should not be allowed to vote for postseason awards as a minority owner.
Is anyone thinking that Tom Brady's using his AP Coach of the Year vote on Antonio Pierce when he's going to fire him? Or, you know what? Hey, I'm going to vote Max Crosby for defensive... No, stop. So, you know, there's an MVP vote. He's a broadcaster. People, freak out over this conflict of interest, minority owner, broadcaster. I don't think Brady is going to sit here and rig the system now for all the Raiders guys. So Tom Brady should not be allowed to vote for postseason awards as a Raiders minority owner. I got no problem with Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. doing that. So I'm going to go offsides.
Offsides.
You know, Tom Brady, quite frankly, come into a family barbecue of mine, punch my father in the face, and I love my dad, but hey, Tom, you want a beer? You want a cigar? You want a avocado smoothie? Oh, yeah, even though I'm allergic to avocado, Tom, you want me to drink the avocado smoothie? Yeah, fine. You know, Brady could basically do no wrong in my book, and that will drive people crazy. Oh, Gelb, you know, you suck up to Tom Brady. Yeah. You know, you root for a quarterback that wins your team 6 Super Bowl championships. You would suck up to him as well, and you would love Tom Brady. So suck on that. All righty.
Well, Teddy Bridgewater, he left the NFL and became a high school football coach, leading his team to an undefeated season and a state championship. And now he's back with the Lions this time as a backup for the playoff run. And reports say multiple teams want him as an assistant coach, onside, offside. Teddy Bridgewater will be an NFL head coach in the next 5 years.
I think he could go coach college. I'm not going to sit here and say I think he'd be a head coach in college, NFL head coach within the next 5 years. I guess it's possible, but if you ask me yes or no, I would lean more no right now. So Teddy Bridgewater will be an NFL head coach within the next 5 years. I'm going to go offsides.
Offside.
All right, penultimate question. On Sunday, the Packers and Vikings are
using
against
big words. Penultimate?
I love that word. I use it all the time. Yeah.
You know, whenever that's said, I always think it's the last question, and then I realize that it's the second to last.
Yeah.
I was like, penultimate.
It always throws people off. I always like to use it.
I go, we got 4 more minutes left in this segment. You don't got to ask this the last question. I'm like, oh, he said penultimate. Azarm with the big vocab right here. Continue.
Packers and Vikings are facing off each other in a big battle in the NFC North that could determine the 1 seed in the NFC. But while Minnesota has the better record, the Packers lead the Vikings in offensive points and yards per game, as well as defensive yards allowed. Onside, offside, you have more confidence in the Packers come playoff time than the Vikings.
I have more confidence in the Minnesota Vikings because of their defense and also their star power on offense. So I still think the Packers are still a year away from really being a legitimate title contender. So when you ask me, you have more confidence in the Packers come playoff time than the Vikings, I'm going to go offside on that one. And now this leads us to the last question here.
Not penultimate. It is the ultimate last question.
Mm-hmm. The ultimate.
Yes. Eric Bieniemy is one of the hottest assistant names of the, as obviously the Chiefs offensive coordinator, and he has no shot yet as a head coach yet. But after one failed season with the Commanders, Bieniemy lasted just 1 season at UCLA. Now the coach has reportedly joined the Washington Huskies as an offensive analyst. Onside, offside, Bieniemy's success in Kansas City was all about Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and not him being a brilliant offensive mind.
I don't think that's fair to say. I think he's a really good offensive mind. You also just have to manage people, and he's a hard ass. You know, he's a my way or highway type of guy. And you heard some of those complaints when he was with the Washington Commanders for a year. And that's kind of the tough part now about being a head coach. You either have to be a player's coach and not a doormat, which is tough to be. But if you are kind of a my way or the highway guy, it's tough to have a role like that. So Bieniemy, I hate to say it, he's got to become a little bit softer if he wanted to become a head coach. But when he didn't get a job for a few years, I think that ship has already sailed. I was kind of surprised that we even had an Eric Bieniemy question here. I know I saw the report with the Washington Huskies, but when he was only at 1 season for UCLA and he had to kind of talk himself out of how it was an agreement and it wasn't a firing and this is why we parted ways, and now he lands with the Washington Huskies and no NFL teams are interested, I think they know that if they bring in Bieniemy to be a coordinator, everyone's going to be like, oh, well, when is he going to be a head coach? And I don't think he's ever going to be a head coach in the NFL. I would have liked to have seen it, but when the NFL is giving up to you now, all you getting is college. Like, could you go be a consultant somewhere? Sure. I don't even know if I'll ever be an offense coordinator again in the NFL at this rate. So, you know, could he have gone back to Kansas City? I guess it's possible, but I think that time and that conversation has really sailed now. So Bieniemy's success in Kansas City was all about Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, not him being a brilliant offensive mind. I'm not going that far. He's a bright offensive mind. I just think he's kind of one of those guys. It's my way or the highway, and those guys don't become head coaches anymore. So I'm going to go offside on that one.
Offside.
All right, that will do it for Onside Offside. This is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Hey, Azarm, quick question for you. I don't know if you've ever met this guy. Have you ever heard of Tom DiBenedetto? He is Jim Rome's producer.
I've not met him, but I know who he is. I know of him.
Okay, so D-Ben, he was my board op for a little bit. and he was Amy Lawrence's producer for many, many years.
Yes, I do remember now. Yeah.
You sound like D-Ben.
Really?
Yeah. When you were reading the questions, I was like, is Di Benedetto behind on that board once again? Are we going back to like 2020? January of 2020? You sound like D-Ben. You guys have a similar cadence and a similar delivery and a similar sound to your voice. So, I don't know.
I'll take it as a compliment.
Nah, it's not. I like D-Ben. And his wife makes unbelievable Christmas cookies, Gigi. The best Pinoli cookies I've ever had. All righty, we're coming on back. Zach Gelb Show.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, away we go. Hour number 3 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on the Infinity Sports Network. Coming up in 20 minutes, an old friend of the radio program. Shaun Morash is going to stop by. The artist formerly known as Morash is going to join us. He will do some NFL picks with us. Our picks this year, and Morash and I back in the day on the DA show when it was right here on the Infinity Sports Network, we had a pick battle. And I was so bad, and Morash wasn't even good at the picks this year, but with how bad I was, no one ever mentioned Morash's picks. This year is quite the opposite. This year I am 25-20 on the season, and our guest pickers are 28-17. Now, the guest pickers, it's one guest picker per week, but the fact that these guest pickers have gone 28-17 is just ridiculous. So if you've been following our guest pickers all throughout the year, you've been making a whole lot of money. But I wonder if we just picked one, if they'd be able, it wouldn't sustain that record, but would they be able to surpass my record of 25-20? Our guest pickers so far this year, Pat Boyle went 2-1. Ariel Epstein went 2-1. Trista Crick went 3-0. Wow, we both went 3-0 that week. Perloff went 3-0. We had Pat McCarthy. He went 1-2. Hot Take Hickey even went 2-1. Don't worry, I went 3-0. Paul Pasps went 1-2. Ricky Ricardo went 2-1. Bart Winkler went 2-1. Maggie Gray went 2-1. DA, David Amendolara, went 2-1. John Kuhn, former NFL fullback, went 2-1. Ari Temkin from Big 12 Radio went 2-1. Stu Kovacs had a stinker at Army-Navy Radio Row. He went 1-2. And then Chris Brockman, who is the producer of The Rich Eisen Show, which is going to be joining the Infinity Sports Network on January 6th from 12 to 3, taking over the Rome slot, what's been the Rome slot for so many years. He went 1-2. You know, that's incredible that we've only had, doing this the entire season, we took off 1 week because we just weren't here. But we only had 1, 2, and 3, 4 guest pickers not go above 500. That's pretty damn good. So we will see today if the Thictator, Shaun Morash, could get you some, big wad of cash into your pockets. All righty, so 25-20 on the season for yours truly. Our guest pickers are 28-17. So I want to do this before we get to Morash coming up in about 15 minutes. Going to go division by division. Who's the biggest joke in the NFL in that division? Who's the most disappointing team this year in that division? And sometimes, right, you could be the biggest joke and be the most disappointing team, and you could be the biggest joke but also not be the most disappointing team. So in the AFC East, I think it's clear, most disappointing and the biggest joke, clean sweep, it's the Jets, Jets. I know some people say, oh, what about the Dolphins? Well, they lost 2 for 4 games. They're still 7-8. I know that they've been disappointing, but they've been able to put lipstick on a pig. Tua not playing well, in terms of that team getting off to a good start up against the Packers. We're discouraging with how much smack he did talk. But the Jets were easily supposed to be a playoff team this year. and they are closer to the number 1 overall pick than becoming a playoff team, being at 4-11 this season. So they're the biggest joke in the AFC East. They're also the most disappointing team in the AFC East. AFC North. I think the most disappointing team are the Cincinnati Bengals. They're 7-8, still not technically eliminated from the playoffs, but their wins this year, they haven't had a good win. Panthers, Giants, Browns, Raiders, Browns again, Titans, and Cowboys. The Bengals have not had a good win this year. Their offense with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow has been at an awesome rate. Burrow, any other year, would have won the MVP if his team could just put together, 10 wins or so. But this is a team that they got out to a terrible start. Their defense has been absolutely horrible. And there's some games that they should have won if their defense could just be average. And their defense has been terrible for the majority of the season. So I would say the Bengals are the most disappointing. I still don't think they're going to make the playoffs. And where the expectations were, that would be so tough to believe before the start of the season. But the biggest joke are the Cleveland Browns. And I know they've had a ton of injuries. But even before Deshaun Watson got hurt, he's been terrible. And this has been a team that even with their injuries, they have too much talent to be sitting there with only 3 wins on the season. And just when you thought that the Browns maybe were getting things right the last few years, making a few playoff games and things like that, you're sitting there saying, uh-oh, what are we doing with this direction of this franchise moving forward? AFC South, I think it's a clean sweep here. Most disappointing and the biggest joke, it's Jacksonville being at 3-12. I was actually stupid enough to think that the Jaguars could actually win this division before the year started. You could say the Texans are somewhat disappointing, but they've already won this division. And the Houston Texans are going to have double-digit wins. They're going to be, they're in the playoffs once again. They'll beat Tennessee. But I thought they were going to be able to take that next step, and they haven't been able to do so. But when you have the Jacksonville Jaguars sitting there at 3-12, yeah, that's a clean sweep for most disappointing and also the biggest joke. Raiders, easy. Biggest disappointment, biggest joke in the AFC West. You can't criticize the Chiefs, the Chargers, or Broncos, and the Raiders. Think where we were last year. How everyone, including myself, were saying you got to hire Antonio Pierce. The only reason you don't bring back Antonio Pierce is if you get Jim Harbaugh. That was the conversation. Now, fast forward a year later, everyone, I think I was the last person to say, oh, maybe Antonio Pierce won't be back. And now I think it's pretty clear that Antonio Pierce isn't going to be back, and he's going to be one and done. And the Raiders, the mistake they made a few years ago with Ziegler and also with Josh McDaniels, it wasn't getting rid of Derek Carr, but it was having no plan once they did get rid of Derek Carr. And I think they tried to get Brady. Brady retired. I'm surprised they didn't pursue Aaron Rodgers with Devontae Adams was already there. But when you go to Jimmy G, our old boss, Spike Eskin, before he was my boss, when he was at Sports Radio 94 WIP, we got into a big debate online. And Spike is a Patriot hater, just like his father. And he hates Tom Brady, just like his father. And Spike was saying the Patriots need to move on from Tom Brady for Jimmy G. And this was like before the Patriots even won the 6th Super Bowl. And I go, Spike, why am I going to get rid of the greatest quarterback of all time who is still playing really damn well and still winning for an unknown in Jimmy G? And he was like, nope, you always go younger, the younger commodity, blah, blah, blah. You always go younger. That was Spike was saying. And Spike couldn't have been more wrong on that. When he got the job here, I reminded him, after we made sure I got promoted into the 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern time slot, I made sure to remind him, hey, remember that Jimmy G take when Jimmy G can't even get on a football field right now. So Raiders, most disappointing and the biggest joke when you look inside the AFC West. NFC East. You know what? It's weird to say the Cowboys are now disappointing. Just because the way that they played the last few weeks. And Dak's been out. And they've had a bunch of injuries. And they could still finish, right, above 500. I don't think it's going to happen. They play the Eagles and the Commanders. So, there's a good chance the Eagles won't have Hurts this weekend. So could they be 8-9 and they'll just be below 500? Sure. Could they be 7-10? Yeah, I guess it's a possibility. I guess, though, the biggest joke, it's by far and away the Giants, but I had no expectation for the Giants. I expect them to be bad. So I will say that the Cowboys, even though this is probably not fair, they're the most disappointing. You can't say it's the Eagles. You can't say it's the Commanders. So I would say the Cowboys are the most disappointing, but that's kind of loose. And the Giants, by far and away, the biggest joke in this division. NFC North, clean sweep. Most disappointing, biggest joke, Chicago Bears. How the Bears are 4-12, and we're already wondering if Caleb Williams' confidence is shot. That's just mind-boggling. And this is a team that was 4-2. They lose that game on the Hail Mary to Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, and they haven't won a game since. What a joke. NFC South, I can't say that the Panthers are disappointing or a joke. I would say the most disappointing is Atlanta because I thought they would run away with this division, and we don't know if they will now. And I would say the biggest joke are the Saints. There's just no hope for the Saints. And when you look at the NFC West, most disappointing the 49ers, and the biggest joke are the San Francisco 49ers as well. I know they suffered a bunch of injuries, but with that talent, them being 6-9, that's just completely unacceptable. So, when you look and go through all those teams in each division, who's the most disappointing team in the NFL this year? And then also, who's the biggest joke in the NFL this year? 855-212-4227. 855-212-4227. Even though I'm disappointed with the Jaguars, when you get to the most disappointing team, it still either has to be the Bengals or the 49ers. And because of the 49ers' injuries, I will still give them somewhat of a pass in terms of getting the crown that no one wants of the most disappointing team in the NFL. And hey, I get it. The Bengals could still get into the postseason, but I still think it's very unlikely. I still think it's unlikely. But if they get in, that could change. Right now, assuming the Bengals don't get in, which, they beat the Broncos, right? Different conversation. And they have to play the Steelers. You got to beat the Steelers. But if the Bengals don't get in the postseason, and that's subject to change on this if they don't get into the postseason, I would then say the most disappointing team in the NFL, because what Burrow and Chase have done this year is just absolutely ridiculous, and how that defense potentially couldn't get them into the postseason. That's why I would put them in there. Now, the biggest joke. Oh, boy. I think it comes down to the Bears or the Jets. That's like, which disease would you rather have? Would you rather have option A or option B in terms of getting diagnosed with the disease? I can't believe I'm going to say this, because a month ago, I would say the Jets are the biggest circus in the sport. But the fact that the Bears have, and I think the Jets have more talent, but the fact that the Bears have lost 10 in a row, and I know the Jets haven't been that much better, right? The Jets started off the year 2-1. They're now 4-11. But at least they were able to sneak in a victory up against the Texans on Halloween night. At least they were able to beat a bad Jacksonville Jaguars team in Jacksonville on December 15th, even though I would say you'd rather lose that game to get a better draft pick. But you look at what the Bears have done in their last 10 games, they've lost them all. They've lost them all. And even last night, they were in the game, and it was 6-3, and it still felt like they had no chance of even getting into field goal range to tie up the game, or dare I say it, marching down the field to go win the game. When there was that fumble in the game that ended up staying with the Seahawks, or no, actually, it changed possession to the Bears, but it was down by contact, and the Bears thought they had a touchdown, you would have thought the Bears won a Super Bowl. Because those fans had no clue how to react to a touchdown. And it was a defensive touchdown. And you knew with the pileup it was never going to stand. But for the split second when the referee got on the PA and he's like, that's a Chicago Bears touchdown, the place went wild. The place went nuts. Imagine how drunk those fans were last night. Having to go to that game, sit in those elements, and have to watch that bull crap that you watched on a football field. But I think the Bears are the biggest joke in the NFL this year. You have had to fire your offensive coordinator. You've had to fire your head coach. You lost on a Hail Mary. You have talent. Your line still stinks. And now people are questioning your number one overall pick in Caleb Williams. And you have fans. I know Jets fans, right, chanted sell the team as well. I was there at one of those games where they chanted sell the team, except they actually won their game that they chanted sell the team, which was the game up against the Texans. I was there covering it for the station. But the Bears last night, their fans, they stuck around after the game to get close to the Amazon Prime broadcast to just chance sell the team. So I would say the most disappointing team, unless they find a way to make the playoffs here in the last 2 weeks of the season, which is still on the table, I just not believe in it, are the Cincinnati Bengals. Niners are close. If the Bengals make it, then the Niners will be one. But the biggest joke, it's actually the Jets can't even win the biggest joke in the NFL right now. The Jets are 2, and I think the Bears are 1 when it comes to biggest jokes in the NFL for this past season. All righty, we will take a timeout. We will get to our, I'm going to say, award-winning picks when we come on back. I'm 25-20 on the season against the spread. Shaun Morash is going to join us. He's going to be our guest picker. Our guest pickers, they're on fire. They are 28-17 on the season. We'll get to the NFL picks next when we continue on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. That music scared me there for a second. I jumped. I don't know if you could see it on the camera, but I went to the break. There was like a pause before the music played, and then it was loud in my ears, and I jumped. But anyway, this is something you should jump at. Football season. It's obviously in full swing, and you can take full advantage by winning some cash with Sleeper Picks. Sleeper Picks is a fantasy game, but you could win real money. Just pick more or less than at least 2 of your favorite player stats. If you're right, you could win. You can pick up to 8 players to win up to 100 times your money. For a limited time, Sleeper has a special offer. New users have to play $5, and they'll receive $55 in free bonus entries. That's right. If you deposit $25 and play $5, they'll give you 11 $5 bonus entries to start playing. So download the Sleeper app now and use promo code SCORE and get in on this promo before time runs out. What are you waiting for? Download Sleeper today and unlock one of the fastest growing fantasy sports apps in the world. Use code SCORE to claim to play $5, get $55 bonus entry offer. That's code SCORE. Must be at least 18 years old in most states and present in state where it is legal to wager. Promo code location, other restrictions apply. Minimum deposit $25. See terms to use for details at sleeper.com. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-426-2537 for help. Sponsored by Sleeper, a Blitz product.
You're in a 4-minute break. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. "45 seconds remaining. "30 seconds remaining. "15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show.
I just saw from On3 Sports, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network, that Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart is declaring for the 2025 NFL Draft. Dart recorded 13,066 total yards and 91 touchdowns in his 4-year career. So Jackson Dart is off to the NFL. And it brings up the conversation of who's going to be that third quarterback in the draft. You know, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are going to be 1-2 in terms of quarterbacks going off the board. I saw Chris Trapasso for CBS Sports just put out a mock draft today. He had Cam Ward going to the Giants. Then he had Shedeur Sanders going to the Raiders. And I'm curious who his next quarterback was after that. So I'm looking through the mock draft right now. And I think Dylan Gabriel could rise up. I know we had Christian Hackenberg on the other day. He said, I know Drew Aller's coming on back, but maybe there's still a chance that if Aller goes on to get to a championship game, could he still declare? He doesn't have another quarterback going. He doesn't have another quarterback going, which, quite frankly, I think Gabriel will be my best guess right now if you had a third quarterback sneak it into the first round. But that just shows you really the difference between 1 and 2 in this draft class, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, if you need a quarterback, compared to what's then going to happen after that. Talking about teams that need a quarterback, by the way. This guy has needed a quarterback for the last few years because Daniel Jones' experience is clearly obviously already over with him going to the Minnesota Vikings getting released this year. And now the Giants are in position to get that number 1 overall pick, so they'll get their choice of either Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward if everything holds pat for them in the final 2 weeks of the season. Let's welcome in an old friend here to the Infinity Sports Network. You know him as Morash. Now he's a professional grown-up, so we call him Shaun Morash, who is, of course, on Evan and Tiki on WFAN in New York, and he's kind enough to join us right now. Were he at the aquarium today? It was so boring that he had to jump on board with us and do picks? Oh, Morash is frozen.
Yeah, buddy. We did about 4 hours at an aquarium and 2 hours at a friendly restaurant. I'm frozen?
No, now you're good. Now you're good. You're good. You're good. You're good now. You're on a little bit of a delay, but now you're good. I got you.
All right. Sorry, dude. I did 4 hours at an aquarium with kids and multiple hours at a friendly's restaurant because, frankly, the service sucks these days. It's been a hell of a day. Nice to see you working on a Friday, though, Zach.
Come on. I'm a hard hat guy. I work 7 days a week around here. I am actually a hard hat guy. But they still do the birthday friendlies has a birthday song. They still do that?
If they did, they'd still be singing the way people were waiting on their food today at the friendlies I was at. Put it that way. I mean, it was some scene. Unbelievable. I don't know what's happened in this poor establishment. Can we get some decent employees? The year is 2024, about to be 2025. And I can't have a fribble go out the door. No more Reese's Pieces Sunday because these guys suck at serving barbecue melts.
Let's be real, though. You weren't really at friendlies for your kids. You're really more so at friendlies for yourself, correct?
Yeah, they have no say on where we go. I wanted a Reese's Pieces Sunday like the fat ass I am, and I enjoyed it.
And then the chicken fingers, too, I always remember from friendly. So where are you at with the Giants right now? You at more Shedeur Sanders or you at more Cam Ward if you had to make the number 1 overall pick today?
If I had to make the number 1 overall pick, I would take Cam Ward. But I would not be disappointed at all if it's Shedeur Sanders. And that's not me being like scared to pick one. That's just, I guess there's a tinge of me a little worried about Deion interference, just a tinge. I think that's been a little overblown, but for me, if I'm making a tiebreaker, there feels like there's absolutely no BS that comes with Cam Ward. And how many games of, Miami this year where Cam Ward, I think, just, tried to make something out of nothing. And I think that maybe, hurt his stats at times, but I think both have showed that they absolutely could be pro players. I know this is a quarterback class overall that everybody's down on, but overall, gun to my head, I'm going Cam Ward, but I wouldn't be disappointed with Shador.
Yeah, I've been more team Shador Sanders over Cam Ward, but you also have to wonder who's going to be the head coach and who's going to be the general manager. Are Shane and Daboll definitely out, or do you think there's still a chance that John Mara says will run it back?
I believe Joe Shane is back no matter what at this point, barring him putting his feet in the ground and saying, I'm not firing Brian Daboll. I think it's probably 60-40 that Daboll's gone. That being said, that's not what I would want. I would either keep both or get rid of both. I wouldn't split this up, but I think we are trending in a classic Giants direction like they did with Dave Gettleman, where they keep the GM, get rid of the coach, which I think is the wrong move because I think the coach has been better than the GM. But that's just, where my gut leans and, where the whispers are falling right now.
It's actually crazy. I'm not saying the Giants are a great job. There's a reason why if the job was open, the team's in a pretty miserable state, as we know. But I was doing this earlier. I was making some predictions, and I said, I think the Raiders will end up getting Mike Vrabel because of the Brady connection. I had Ben Johnson going to the Bears. Then after that, Giants, Jaguars, Jets, and Saints. I think you could argue that the Giants are the next best job available because you have Malik Neighbors, and you're in all likelihood going to have the number 1 overall pick. It's slim pickings with all those teams, but if I get a 3-year kind of time clock, first year wash, second year get better, third year go make the playoffs, I kind of like having the number 1 overall pick and a player like Malik Neighbors.
I don't think it's crazy. Look, and obviously it's predicated on getting the quarterback right, of course. Like there's so much argument about, well, if you take a quarterback and you're wrong, it sets your organization back. Yeah, but if you don't take a quarterback and you constantly filter through bridge stuff, hoping that the right quarterback is going to come out at the right time, you're never going to align. So if they got the quarterback right, I think people also forget when you have the number 1 overall pick in the draft or number 2 overall pick in the draft, that means you get that pick in the second round, the third round, the fourth round, which also, if you have a good draft, should result in finally, helping that cupboard. And the Giants, as you know, Zach, had a decent to good draft this past year, and that's how you still start building a core. Plus, the $60 million as it stands in cap space the Giants are going to have with a rookie quarterback on a rookie quarterback clock. The Giants have a chance with this coming off season, and then once they see what they have the following off season, still with more cap space and whatever, I think to really get the foundation cooking here. So I don't think it's that crazy. And everybody talks about, 5-year rebuilds, 10-year rebuilds. Man, if you hit on quarterback, you saw it with the Washington Commanders this year. You saw it with the Texans the year before. Heck, you saw it with the Broncos this year. Teams that look like they're going to be bad suddenly get good in a heartbeat if you swing and hit at the right position. So it doesn't have to be that long a climb back if that pick is the right one, whether it's Ward or Sanders, and they are good paired with a good coach.
Now, the listeners, they love your family. We got to know. And I watched the Giants game with Bob this year, and he was okay. He was still in a little bit of a denial. But how is Bob doing knowing now that, hey, it's better to lose so you get the number 1 pick?
My dad has always been old school, where he's like, you never know what day is your last. I always want to see the Giants win. He's completely flipped this year.
Wow.
He watches all the games with me too. So, every Sunday we're watching quarterbacks make plays all over the place. But 2 weeks ago, he had a big fist pump when the Giants had a field goal block versus the Saints. Last week, the first Drew Lock pick 6. I don't even do that. I don't even fist pump and slap hands at plays against my team. I just would rather them lose in this spot. But he is so fully in. And his theory, and this is so morbid, is I'm going to be 65 years old. With any luck, the next quarterback they hit plays for 15 years. That takes me till I'm 80.
Yeah.
I need a nice, good quarterback window here in my. I don't blame him for thinking that way. Hell, if I was 65, I care about the Giants that much. Maybe I'd think that way. But he doesn't want to keep wasting years of his life watching a team be completely uncompetitive. Matter of fact, today at the aquarium, Zach, kid 6 years old walked by in a Jameer Gibbs jersey. First thing he pointed out, none about my own kids walking around the whole place, was, you see what John Mara's done here? We're going to lose fans to the Lions. It's too easy for kids to watch games. So that's where he's at right now.
All righty, we'll get to picks in just a second. A few more with Morash just going around the league. Aaron Rodgers, is he back with the Jets next year? Yes or no?
I'm going to say no. I think if the head coach, we knew Ulbrich was staying, which he wouldn't, that'd be asinine. Maybe it's different, but I'm going to say no, because if you were a new head coach coming in to start things fresh, I've heard the case, well, why wouldn't you want Aaron Rodgers? Well, why the hell would you? I mean, clearly he held the team over a barrel for every player he needed to have. How could you truly start your own program your own way and have Aaron Rodgers hanging over you? I mean, last week, I thought it was embarrassing what the Jets did. Him and Davante Adams basically decided they were going to play two-hand touch football on the street with each other, and nobody else was allowed to be involved, all trying to get Davante Adams to catch Aaron Rodgers' 500th touchdown, which, by the way, I'd play Davante Adams anytime touchdown this week because the same garbage is going to happen. Why on earth? It felt like the two of them were auditioning as a team, like in Step Brothers, when they auditioned for jobs. It feels like they're auditioning together to play somewhere next year. I say no. Now, the question is, how many suitors will Aaron Rodgers have? And is that, he has to come back hat in hand to the Jets? I guess that's possible, but I really, really don't think so. Just because if you're a new coach, why the hell would you want to deal with that?
You know what's crazy? Up until probably this week, I would have said the Jets have been the biggest joke in the NFL. After what we've now seen from Chicago, at least the Jets have given you, 2 wins in the last 2 months. The Bears losing 10 in a row, having the number 1 overall pick last year. Williams' confidence already shot. If you did a redraft today, you probably have Daniels and also Drake May going in front of him. The Bears are the biggest joke in the NFL this year.
I want to make one thing clear. I think the Bears are a joke. I think it's still hard to top the Jets, even with what's happened with the Bears, Zach. People pick the Jets, like people who are reputable, pick the Jets to contend with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and forget Josh Allen. The Bills thought they win the division and be a Super Bowl team. Yeah. And the team has 4 wins. The Bears, look, if you were, smoking the Jeeba here on what they were going to do with a rookie quarterback and thought they were going to win a division in this division and go to the playoffs, that's your own fault. Like, legitimate people thought that's how good the Jets were going to be. Here's the deal with the Bears. Where they were a joke is you don't have Matt Eberflus, who's already a joke of a head coach, come back with the number 1 overall pick. And I would have made the case maybe that I'm okay with Dable staying with the Giants. Someone said to say he's a quarterback guy, he's an offensive guy. Eberflus was a defensive guy. So it made no sense anyway. So they screwed themselves big time, but I don't think it's, you talk about Jaden Daniels, Drake May, yada, yada, yada. Dude, look at what happened to Bryce Young this year after getting sat down, comes back. You can't tell me Caleb Williams is just completely wasted by this year and that his career shot. So they've been a joke. They've been a dumpster fire. But, man, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, people thought could contend for a freaking Super Bowl, and they have 4 wins.
All righty, let's get to the music. There was once a time where Shaun Morash and we did NFL picks together. We'll do it again right now. Oh, usually there's a big voiceover guy. Sorry, Shawnee. And it goes, it's time for NFL picks on the Zach Gelb Show. But you know what it's like. You get a lot of new people working on the show this time of the year. So I won't throw anyone under the bus there, even though I just did it. Now, Morash and I, when we did picks together on the DA show, we were like the Jets and the Bears, quite frankly. Shaun wasn't good, but I was so bad, no one ever called out Shaun for his incompetence. This year, though, Shawnee, I am 25-20 against the spread, and our guest pickers, I don't want to put any pressure on you, they're 28-17. 28-17 on the season. How have you been picking games this year?
I'm 14 games under 500 on our show.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I've had a bad year on the show. Now, you got to remember, where we are, I have to pick the Jets and Giants every week, so I only get 1 free game, unlike what I used to do over, what's Infinity Sports Net, where you are now. But so that's hurt me a bit. That doesn't mean the bank account doesn't look good for the own bets at home, though, Zach. So I'm prepared to unleash my 3 favorites this week.
Is Shaun Morash a system radio host? 855-212-4227. You can only pick games here on the network. You go local. I don't know. That's all I'm saying. I don't know. All righty, I'll let you go first. Welcome back home, Shawnee. What do you got first pick against the spread?
I'm going right to tomorrow night, Zach. You were like one of 4 radio hosts I heard the day before the season started that jumped on the Rams to win the NFC bandwagon. I don't forget that because out of nowhere, it was like everybody I knew was suddenly on the Rams. They have heated up in a big way, man. And I think the Cardinal, you saw Kyler Murray, the Cardinal elimination last week really hurt them. I think the Rams getting this under a touchdown at lane 6.5. I think they're looking to flex. I think they're looking to clinch. Give me the Rams tomorrow night minus the 6.5.
It's funny. I looked at that game and I was debating between, do I pick the Rams laying 6.5 or do I take the Dolphins laying 6.5? And I sat there, I looked at it, and I first went with the Dolphins. So I'm going to take the Dolphins once again. I don't like that they're going to have to play in some bad weather conditions being in Cleveland, but the Browns stink right now. I think the Dolphins get to 8-8 on the year. Give me the Fins laying the 6.5 points.
All right, that was originally the Sunday night game. Pick number 2, I'm going to the Who Cares Bowl here. Give me the Raiders building off last week. Antonio Pierce and a middle finger toward Tom Telesco. They're laying the 1.5 in New Orleans. And I think the Raiders give you a little punch in the mouth moment, a very ugly game, but I think they're going to beat the Saints outright. Obviously, they're favorited. I think they're winning the game by 3 or more. Give me the Raiders.
Okay, this is going to be the uncomfortable game. And this could be a little scar. I don't know how I remember this. When I was picking games up against you, I saw the Packers and the Vikings. I think it was like week 1 or week 2. And the Packers were like, -1, 1.5, 2-point favorite. And I ended up taking them with the, lay the number. Oh, such a low spread. So it's Packers and Vikings again. This time the Vikings are a 1.5 favorite. The Vikings are 13-2. I think they are better than the Packers. I still think the Packers are a year away. I'm going to take the favorite once again, just like I did years ago, except this time it's going to be Minnesota. I love the Vikings at home laying a 1.5.
I like that pick. I think them and the Lions is going to matter the last week of the year, so I do like that pick. For me, pick number 3, I'm going to a game so juicy it was flexed for Sunday night. I'm taking the Commanders laying 3.5 with the hook here. You're telling me the Falcons are just magically with Michael Penix going to go win this division easy on Sunday night? No way. I still think the Falcons have major warts. They're not going to get the pick sixes that they got from Drew Lock last week. I think the Commanders, it won't be that pretty, but they'll handle enough to cover the 3.5 on Sunday night. Give me the Commanders.
What were your impressions, by the way, of Michael Penix Jr.?
Michael Penix Jr. looked like a first-round pick that started in his first ever game and got helped out by an enormous run game and his defense scoring multiple times. So I think the jury's very much out. I don't think he's going to be a bust by any means, but I can't proclaim him some kind of god after one game. Can I see him where the defense isn't scoring multiple times?
Okay. Let me get to something that you said earlier, and I'll piggyback off of it. You talked about that number 1 seed mattering in the NFC. I go to Monday Night Football. Lions are a 3.5-point favorite in Santa Clara. The 49ers, they've given up on this season a few weeks ago when they've had all these injuries. You know that they're not going to get back to the playoffs, and it's all Super Bowl or bust for them. I think the Lions just absolutely stomp the 49ers, and it's weird to say they get revenge from the championship game a year ago because who even knows who's playing for the 49ers, but I could see Dan Campbell selling the revenge card. So give me the Lions laying 3.5. The picks this week, I have the Lions laying 3.5, the Vikings laying 1 point, Dolphins laying 6.5, and Morash ends up going Rams laying 6.5, Raiders laying 1.5, and the Commanders laying 3.5. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. I have no clue if you come prepared or not. Which, now I feel like I was Damon Amendola back in the day saying, I don't know if Shaun Morash is prepared or not. Do you have
I'm still on Oregon. I'm still on Oregon if that's where you're going.
No, I'm not even going college football. Do you have a football food of the week?
Oh, a football food of the week. I love this, Zach. I love where you're going here. For me, I'm going with Chipotle chicken quesadillas this week. I've already bought the goods for that. So, quite frankly, it's like the smoky Chipotle sauce. I'm going to marinate some chicken for about 24 hours or so. I'm going to get that chicken cooking in the crock pot Saturday night into Sunday. It's going to be nice and done. I'm going to get those tortillas, a little butter in the frying pan, back and forth each way, fry up the tortillas, obviously with the chicken that's already cooked and the cheese melted in. You get that smoky Chipotle heat. I think it's delicious. A little sour cream. How you doing? That's a big Sunday afternoon. And probably about halftime Commanders Falcons have a lot of 2-ply on hand.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've been having the runs right to the bathroom for Shaun Morash. Shaun, always great to catch up with you. I will see you next week, right? You're in the office next week, correct?
I am back on Monday. Don't pull no jokes. I'll be there. I'll be there with bells on. I'll see you later, Zach. See you later, everybody.
You got it. There he is, Shaun Morash, old friend to the Infinity Sports Network when it was here, CBS Sports Radio, now down the hall. Still in the company, but working on Afternoon Drive on WFAN in New York with Evan and Tiki. And you know what? This bastard, he puts out on social media before we get on, I'm seeing this, hopping on my old stomping grounds on the Infinity Sports Network to teach Zach Gelb how to make NFL winning bets at 5:20 p.m. Eastern time. Hey, I'm 25-20 on the year. I'll tell you my record when my record's good. I'll tell you my record when my record's bad. Shaun's 14 games under 500. 14 games under 500. Jeez. Just a bad showing this year for Shaun Morash. Real quickly, a sad note to pass along. This is from the CBS Sports PR team. It's with profound sadness that we share the passing of our beloved husband and father, Greg Gumbel. He passed away peacefully, surrounded by much love after a courageous battle with cancer. Greg approached his illness like one would expect he would, with grace and positivity. He leaves behind a legacy of love, inspiration, and dedication to over 50 extraordinary years in the sports broadcasting industry, and his iconic voice will never be forgotten. Greg's memory will forever be treasured by his family, dearest friends, colleagues, and all who loved him. That is from Marcy and Michelle Gumbel. So that's a statement from the Greg Gumbel family. A sad note to pass along on a Friday with the passing of legendary broadcaster Greg Gumbel. May he rest in peace. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will take a break. We will come on back. First up, standing by with the latest sports flash, here is Erica Herskowitz.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
All right, Zach, it looks like another coach is out of a job. The Sacramento Kings reportedly fired Mike Brown today after just 3 seasons. The Kings have lost 5 straight, a dismal 13-18 on the year. Brown just signed that contract extension through 27 back in June. From baseball, his days in pinstripes are over. 2-time All-Star Gleyber Torres is no longer a Yankee. He signed a 1-year deal with the Tigers worth $15 million. From the NHL, Capitals captain Alex Ovechkin participated in a full practice today and could be back in the lineup as early as tomorrow night in Toronto. He's been out since mid-November with a broken left leg. 5 bowl games on the schedule today. The second of the day is in full swing. Third quarter at the Birmingham Bowl. Vanderbilt leads Georgia Tech 14-13. Earlier, Navy held off Oklahoma 21-20 to win the Armed Forces Bowl. And you just heard the sad news coming down today. Longtime sportscaster Greg Gumbel, who called NFL games on CBS for decades and served as the studio host for the NCAA tournament, has died after a battle with cancer. Gumbel was 78 years old. I'm Erica Herskowitz.
855-212-4227. That's the number to get in touch with us, the Infinity Sports Network. Give us a call, 855-212-4227.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show. Not that I'm an old curmudgeon, but let me ask you this, Alex's arm. Are you working on New Year's Eve? Just wondering.
I believe I am.
Like in the prime hours of New Year's Eve?
Not this year. I'm working from 2 to 7 p.m. on the fan.
Okay, so you could still go out and have a good...
Yeah.
How old are you? What, 26?
25. I just turned 25, yeah.
So New Year's Eve to you is like still a big deal? You go out, have fun, all that stuff?
I'm an introvert, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not a going out guy.
Gotcha. So
if I live with a roommate, maybe if he goes out, I'll go out with him.
Gotcha. Okay. So when I was 25, 26, and not that many years ago, I'm only 30, I would always be going out. Now I can't stand New Year's. I think it's the most overrated holiday that we have. But I remember there was one year where I was hosting here. I was filling in for Scott Farrell at the time. You know, Farrell on the bench, shake it up. You know, Carver High Mafia not here. We'll put that fat ass Zach Gelb on New Year's Eve when I go have fun with my friends. So I ended up doing New Year's Eve for Scotty Farrell. My friends went to a Fish concert in the city. Fish always does their big New Year's show. And I met up with them afterwards. So I got off the shift at 2 a.m., and then we went out afterwards. So that used to be my New Year's Eve grind. Even when I had to work, I still went out. This year, I've never been to a Fish show. One of my friends asked me the other day, do you want to go to Fish? So I'm not going for New Year's Eve. I'm doing like some dinner on New Year's Eve with a bunch of friends. But on Monday, after I host this show, next week we're here Monday. We're off Tuesday, Wednesday, back Thursday, Friday. I will be going on Monday to my first ever Fish show. Now, I am more of like a Springsteen fan. I've seen Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden. I've seen Jay-Z and Kanye at Madison Square Garden, the Watch the Throne tour, which was awesome. Great show. You know, I saw with Samter. We saw Green Day together. We also saw U2, I think it was. So, I like going to concerts. David Immerman, the guitarist for Avril Lavigne, is a listener, friend of the show. He invited me to see Avril Lavigne this summer, which is pretty damn cool. So I've seen a lot of different types of musicians. Armin van Buuren with EDM when I was in Mexico one year for New Year's. Now that was a lot of fun, if you could use your imagination a little bit. But I'm going to see Fish for the first time. So that's going to be a Monday night at Madison Square Gardens. Looking forward to that. Now, do you know who's working New Year's Eve? Going to be the first voice on the network to say Happy New Year to everyone. Do you know?
I do not.
So it's not Bart Winkler. Bart is actually the fill-ins for us next week on Tuesday and Wednesday. Linnell Willingham's going to be filling on Tuesday, and then Bart Winkler is going to be moving up and do an hour show on Wednesday. So on the 31st, it is actually the Big Fajita, Rich Herrera. As I see that name on social media all the time, the Big Fajita. I would love to know how that nickname did come about, but we'll get to story time another day. Anyway, it's time to answer Ask the Pros question of the day. It's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Bella B in Calgary says, "Hi, Zach. If there could be a documentary on any athlete, dead or alive, who would you pick? Thanks and have a happy new year." Bella B in Calgary, hashtag Ask the Pros at INS Sportsnet. And just like Bella B in Calgary did, you could submit a question by tweeting at INS Sportsnet or at Zach Gelb using hashtag Ask the Pros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. I'm going to go the more alive route. Instead, I'm not going to be like morbid like Azarm on New Year's Eve, just being, with a bottle of Jack and by himself in his apartment. So I'm not going to go the dead route. I would like to see a doc, and maybe I'm sure there's one done before, but an actual truthful documentary on all the steroid guys. That's what I want to see. Because this annoys me. The other day, I see like all these writers, they put their ballots on there for the Hall of Fame. And they don't have Alex Rodriguez. They don't have Manny Ramirez. And I just hate when you try to eliminate my era. When that was such a fun era and it saved Major League Baseball. You got people that cheated already in the Hall of Fame that did steroids. And then also you got people that knew what was going on still get into the Hall of Fame. So I'd like to see a transparent doc on the steroid era with all the guys and them actually be honest and not just fib their way through all of it. I did watch the Rodgers documentary. I did all 3 episodes of it. I didn't love that Netflix didn't give us credit for using one of our clips from our show, but hey, it is what it is. Throughout that entire doc, I thought he was setting up his retirement. Like kind of showing and explaining why kind of the things that he enjoys outside of football. That's what I felt. And then the final scene, the absolute final scene with the smirk, he looks in the camera, he goes, "Maybe this is my final year. Maybe it's not." And the moment he did that, I go, how stupid was I in the 3 episodes of the doc for up until the final 10 seconds of it to think, oh, he's explaining everything that he does and why he does it, right? His outside interests that are maybe more important to him than football. He did admit at one point in the doc, he goes, "I'm sensitive." I thought that was funny and like a good moment for Aaron Rodgers. But through most of the doc, I go, it feels like he's setting up, not that I expect him to announce his retirement, but just showing more into his life and explaining everything that he does to then kind of say, hey, I have other interests. Football's no longer priority number 1. Now, I will say the rehab that he did and how motivated he was after the Achilles injury was pretty cool to capture. But at the end, when he gives that smirk and that bleep-eating grin on his face where he's like, maybe this is my last year, maybe it's not. I'm like, ugh, this is going to be a drama whore offseason. And it's all going to be reporting. You're going to have ESPN lining up outside the Jets facility. Maybe an ESPN reporter going to Egypt and trying to find Rodgers, going into a cave and trying to do ayahuasca with Rodgers to try to get a decision. And, ultimately he will say, hey, I want to come back. And then the Jets will have to say, well, do we want you back or not? Maybe the Jets make that decision first. But I do think Aaron's going to intend to play next year was the final take that I had on that on the entire documentary. But it was an interesting watch. I wouldn't highly recommend it, but I would recommend it if you need 3 hours to kill at some point over the weekend. Or if you're like Azarm on New Year's Eve and you got nothing to do, turn on the Aaron Rodgers doc. Maybe do a little ayahuasca.
Squid Game instead.
You watch what?
Squid Game.
Oh, okay. You can do that. That's fine. All righty. Fun week, everybody. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. We will be back on Monday. I'm here Sunday for Sunday morning football. And we will chat with you when we chat with you. Have a good one, everybody. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.